Today, we delve into a chilling tale that gripped the world, the tragic story of Kim Wall, a brilliant journalist whose quest for truth led her into the clutches of her murderer. This narrative is not just about the darkness that lies in the hearts of some, but also about the enduring spirit of a woman who lived to tell the stories of others, only to become a story herself. So, buckle up as we embark on this deeply moving journey, unraveling the events that led to a fateful encounter and the aftermath that followed. Join us as we pay tribute to Kim Wall's legacy, a reminder of both the risks journalists face in their pursuit of truth and the resilience of those they leave behind. Stay tuned as we explore the journalist who went to interview her killer. Kim Isabel Fredrika Wall, born into the vibrant heart of Trelleborg, Sweden, on the brisk spring day of March 23, 1987, would carve a path that resonated with the pulse of storytelling and adventure. The daughter of Ingrid, a journalist with a keen eye for economic narratives, and Joachim Wall, a photographer whose work captured moments in time, Kim inherited a legacy of curiosity and creativity. Alongside her younger brother Tom, she was nurtured in a household where the air was thick with tales of the world beyond, their parents often whisking them away to distant lands on journalistic expeditions, instilling in them the value of stories untold. From a tender age, Kim's destiny seemed written in the stars. Her mother fondly recalls how, at just 6 years old, Kim's voracious appetite for stories led her to teach herself to read, eager to dive into worlds far beyond the bedtime tales that left her yearning for more. Kim's spirit, described as nothing short of radiant, brimming with joy, resilience, and a brilliance that lit up every room, was matched only by her insatiable wanderlust and a deep-rooted compassion that guided her steps. Emerging from her adolescence in Malmö with a tapestry of achievements, Kim was poised for greatness, but sought a path distinct from the economic journalism her mother was known for. Her dreams stretched beyond the familiar landscapes of Sweden. She envisioned herself as a beacon for the silenced voices across the globe, those overlooked by the mainstream media. This vision led her to the bustling streets of London, where she joined the ranks of the London School of Economics. Among the intellectual fervor of approximately 11,000 students, Kim thrived, her passion for international relations fueling her academic journey until her graduation in 2011. The allure of further knowledge pulled her across the Atlantic to the vibrant city of New York. Here, she undertook the rigorous challenge of a dual master's degree in journalism and international relations at Columbia University. Her academic pursuits were complemented by an impressive linguistic prowess, including Mandarin Chinese, reflecting her global perspective and readiness to engage with the world in its own myriad tongues. Kim's friends reminisce about her warmth, her sharp intellect, and an indomitable spirit that drove her to seek the heart of every story. Her career as an independent journalist was marked by an enviable portfolio, gracing the pages of prestigious publications such as the New York Times, Harper's, Time, The Atlantic, and Vice magazine. Her words transcended language barriers, touching hearts and minds worldwide. Her journalistic odyssey took her from the aftermath of conflict in Sri Lanka to the heart of the United Nations as a press fellow. She delved into the rebirth of Haiti's tourism industry post-earthquake and ventured into Cuba's burgeoning tech scene. Her explorations led her to the unexpected corners of the world, like a Chinatown nestled in Uganda, and back to Sri Lanka to shed light on the intertwining of feminism and guerrilla warfare. The year 2016 saw Kim's relentless pursuit of truth and beauty recognized with the prestigious Hansel Meath Award for Best Digital Report for Exodus, a compelling multimedia narrative that wove together the impacts of climate change and nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands. In 2017, her life took a turn towards the personal as she embraced a relationship with Ole Staab, a Danish designer. Together, they settled in a quaint Danish town, a stone's throw from Malmö, connected by a bridge that spanned more than just the physical distance, but also the journey of two souls intertwined by love and shared aspirations. As Kim and her partner prepared to embark on a new chapter of their lives in China, their family was swept up in a mix of emotions. They were overjoyed to see Kim so happy and in love, and the thought of her moving abroad with her partner brought them a sense of comfort. Typically, Kim's journalistic pursuits led her into the heart of conflict zones, stirring deep worries within her family. Yet, the prospect of her starting anew in China, alongside her boyfriend, eased their concerns considerably. At 30, Kim had already crafted a life that many could only dream of. Her career was flourishing, her family's support was unwavering, and she was about to embark on an exciting journey with the love of her life. They planned a farewell party for August 10, 2017, to bid adieu to their loved ones before their departure to China scheduled for August 16. However, just before the celebrations could commence, Kim received an unexpected message from Peter Madsen, a name that would soon become pivotal in her story. But who exactly was Peter Madsen? Why did his message hold significance? Peter Madsen's life had been a tapestry of personal challenges and exceptional ingenuity. Born in Denmark on January 12, 1971, his childhood took a turn when his mother left their family early on. Raised by his father, Peter found solace and connection in a shared passion for spacecraft. Although he ventured into engineering studies after high school, his true calling beckoned him elsewhere, to the world of inventions and dreams bigger than the classrooms could contain. Following his father's death when he was 18, Peter poured his heart and soul into building submarines and rockets, leading to the foundation of Copenhagen Suborbitals in 2008. His ambition? To launch manned missions into space aboard his self-made crafts. Dubbed Rocket Madsen by the press, he became known for his pioneering spirit, culminating in the creation of the UC-3 Nautilus, a submarine that was not only a marvel of personal engineering but also a testament to his relentless pursuit of the extraordinary. Funded through sponsors and crowdfunding, the Nautilus represented more than just a vessel. It was a symbol of Peter's dreams and ambitions. The submarine and Peter's journey caught the public's eye, leading to a biography and a documentary titled Amateurs in Space that celebrated his audacious endeavors. By this time, Peter Madsen had cemented his status as a celebrity in his home country. It was against this backdrop that Kim, ever the intrepid journalist, sought to tell Madsen's story. Intrigued by his achievements and the allure of the Nautilus, she reached out for an interview. And so, on the afternoon of August 10th, Peter's message arrived, offering Kim an opportunity to step into his world for a story she hoped would captivate her audience. Accepting his invitation, she planned to meet Madsen at 7 p.m. at the dock, conduct the interview aboard the Nautilus, and return by 10 p.m., just in time to join her farewell party. It seemed like the perfect plan, neatly fitting into her packed schedule before the big move. Kim shared the unexpected invitation with Ole, seeking his thoughts on the adventurous proposition. Ole, ever supportive, encouraged her to seize the opportunity, though he harbored a desire to join her on this novel excursion. The thought of venturing out to sea in a self-built submarine presented a unique thrill, an experience that could have been memorable for the both of them. However, with the farewell party they were hosting that very evening, Ole decided it was best he stayed behind to attend to their guests. Thus, at 7 p.m., Kim made her way alone to the pier, her heart set on the interview with Peter Madsen. By 8:30 p.m., as the submarine prepared to dive, a momentary interaction occurred that would later be recounted by a group of Norwegians passing by in their boat. They engaged in light-hearted banter with Peter, who boasted about the submarine's capabilities, seemingly in an attempt to impress. The atmosphere was jovial, yet Kim remained outside the conversation, an observer to the fleeting camaraderie. The Norwegian man captured this encounter in photographs, not realizing these images would be among the last taken of Kim alive. The digital footprint of Kim's presence on the submarine is limited to a few text messages exchanged with Ole. In one, she reassured him of her safety, mentioning their imminent dive and expressing her love, accompanied by a mention of the coffee and cookies Peter had brought along. Ole continued to text her, receiving no further responses. As the night progressed and Kim failed to return home, concern began to shadow Ole's initial optimism. By 10:30 p.m., with no sign of Kim, Ole took to her bicycle, venturing out to the port in search of any sign of their return. With each passing hour, his worry deepened, leading him to contact the police at 1:45 a.m. on August 11th, followed by a call to the Navy, reporting Kim's disappearance. The search for the Nautilus intensified as the Coast Guard and other vessels scoured the waters, hoping for a sign of the submarine or its occupants. A breakthrough came the morning of August 11th when a lighthouse keeper reported sighting the submarine near the Koge Strait. The Coast Guard raced against time, only to witness the Nautilus begin to sink upon their arrival. Moments before, Peter Madsen had made a desperate escape into the water, where he was promptly rescued, alone. Upon his rescue and subsequent arrest on suspicions of manslaughter, Peter Madsen offered the first of what would become multiple versions of the events that transpired. He claimed to have safely deposited Kim at the port the previous night, near a well-monitored restaurant, a statement quickly discredited by surveillance footage that showed no trace of Kim. This discrepancy cast a looming shadow of doubt and marked the beginning of a harrowing search for the truth behind Kim Wall's disappearance. Kim's sudden and unexplained silence raised immediate alarms among her loved ones. Not a word to her family or a response to Ole's concerned messages. Such behavior was out of character, especially considering the circumstances. It wasn't long before Peter Madsen's initial account of the events on August 11th was scrutinized and dismissed as falsehood. By the following day, Madsen shifted his narrative. He claimed a tragic accident aboard the submarine resulted in Kim's death. A heavy hatch purportedly fell, fatally injuring her. This explanation led him to admit to disposing of her body at sea, an act he described as a solitary decision made amidst thoughts of suicide and a subsequent nap. However, the investigation quickly began to unravel the true nature of events. The submarine, upon examination, showed clear signs of intentional sabotage to ensure its sinking. The discovery of Kim's blood within the submarine further implicated Madsen, though her body remained missing. The grim reality surfaced on August 21st when a beachgoer stumbled upon a horrifying find: a naked torso, later identified through DNA as Kim's. This discovery was followed by the retrieval of her dismembered remains, strategically weighed down in plastic bags, from various underwater locations. Madsen's story evolved yet again by October, this time asserting that Kim succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning within the engine compartment. His admission of dismembering her body contradicted his earlier denials, yet forensic analysis painted a more sinister picture. Kim's body bore multiple stab wounds and other injuries inconsistent with Madsen's account, nullifying his claims of accidental death. Furthermore, there was no evidence of gas leaks aboard the submarine that could lead to such an incident. Investigators posited that Kim had been bound and subjected to violence, indicated by ligature marks on her wrists and elbows. The assortment of wounds made it impossible to pinpoint the exact cause of death. A search of Madsen's property unveiled chilling evidence of his perverse inclinations. Dozens of snuff films and links to similar content were found, mirroring the injuries inflicted on Kim. Madsen's social and professional circles began to reveal disturbing aspects of his persona, including participation in fetish parties and a self-proclaimed affinity for sadism, traits that were overlooked or minimized by those around him. His co-founder, Christopher Meyer, struggled to reconcile the creative and visionary aspects of Madsen's character with the horrifying reality of his actions. As the case proceeded, the prosecution aimed for the severest penalty, life imprisonment, driven by the gravity of Madsen's crimes and the haunting possibility that Kim might not have been his only victim. The unraveling of Peter Madsen's facade exposed a deeply troubled individual, leaving a community grappling with the shocking extent of his malfeasance. The investigation into Peter Madsen's past actions unearthed a particularly curious case that caught the attention of the prosecutor's office. It was the disappearance of Kazuko Toyonaga, a 22-year-old Japanese tourist who vanished under eerily similar circumstances in 1986 in the same city. At the time, Madsen would have been just 15 years old. This striking parallel led to the reopening of Toyonaga's case, though no concrete evidence was found to directly link Madsen to the incident. The trial of Peter Madsen, spanning from March 8 to April 25, 2018, became a focal point for global media attention. Journalists from over 15 countries converged to cover the proceedings, underscoring the international shock and fascination with the case. Prosecutors painted a grim picture of Madsen's intentions, arguing that he had harbored violent sexual fantasies that he sought to fulfill through premeditated murder. They pointed to his preparation for the crime, highlighting that he had equipped the submarine with tools like sharp screwdrivers, hooks, and saws, items unnecessary for a simple voyage but sinister in this context. Experts testifying at the trial described Madsen as highly intelligent yet profoundly disturbed, characterizing him as a sexual deviant with sadistic obsessions. His apparent lack of remorse or guilt was emphasized by the prosecution, noting his chilling tendency to keep personal items of his victims, like Kim Wall's underwear and stockings, as grotesque souvenirs. The trial also revealed narrow escapes for at least 3 women who had been invited onto the submarine by Madsen but had declined for various reasons. Their reasons ranged from finding his persistence odd to feelings of claustrophobia, with one woman expressing her unease with Madsen's text messages in a magazine interview. Despite the mounting evidence and testimonies, Madsen maintained his innocence throughout the trial, offering shifting explanations for his actions. He claimed his varied accounts were attempts to spare Kim Wall's family the harrowing details of her death, stating, "I was just thinking about Kim's relatives. It's a horrible story. I knew I was dead and that I wouldn't return." He only had one purpose, and it was to spare his parents the details of what happened. Ultimately, the court found Peter Madsen guilty on all counts, including premeditated murder, indecent handling of a corpse, and sexual assault, sentencing him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In Denmark, a life sentence typically equates to 15 years, with the option to petition for parole after serving 12 years. This verdict brought a close to a case that had captured the world's attention, leaving a trail of horror, disbelief, and a deep sense of loss for Kim Wall and her loved ones. In light of Peter Madsen's heinous crime, prosecutors advocated for his permanent detention, underscoring the grave risk he posed of committing further atrocities. Within the confines of prison, Madsen reportedly developed an infatuation with a prison official, a relationship that resulted in her dismissal. Subsequent to this controversy, Peter Madsen entered into matrimony with Jenny Kirpin, a Russian national. Kirpin publicly professed her love and support for Madsen, acknowledging his crime but arguing that he was also a victim of his own actions, and that his continued existence served as his punishment. In the wake of their daughter's tragic demise, Kim Wall's parents authored a book celebrating her life and chronicling their profound grief and enduring pain. This tribute also serves as a testament to Kim's vibrant spirit and her profound impact on the world. To honor Kim's memory and support aspiring journalists, her parents established a foundation named after her. This foundation is dedicated to fostering the growth and development of young journalists, ensuring that Kim's legacy continues to inspire and empower future generations. Peter Madsen's story took another dramatic turn in October 2020 when he attempted a daring escape from prison. Using a makeshift weapon to threaten a psychologist, he initiated a bold breakout. Although his plan involved fleeing in a white van, the police swiftly intervened, thwarting his escape. Surrounded by law enforcement, Madsen awaited capture, delayed only by the suspicion that he wore an explosive belt, a testament to his engineering acumen. After a tense standoff, bomb disposal experts confirmed the absence of explosives, leading to Madsen's rearrest. This incident further underscored the persistent danger Madsen poses, with authorities continuing to caution the public about his potential for violence. In the summer of 1982, the city of Salem, Oregon, nestled in the heart of the Willamette Valley, was about to be thrust into the national spotlight for a reason far removed from its rich historical tapestry or its lush, verdant landscapes. This was the summer that Sherry Irely, an 18-year-old girl who had just stepped into the world of adulthood, would vanish under circumstances so mysterious and chilling that they would haunt the community and puzzle investigators for decades to come. Sherry, fresh from the halls of Sprague High School, had embarked on a new chapter in her life that summer. With her high school days behind her, she was living with a cousin in an apartment in South Salem, a move that symbolized her first steps towards independence and adulthood. It was during this transitional period in her life that Sherry found employment with Domino's Pizza, a popular pizza delivery chain that was, at the time, a staple of American fast food culture. Despite being relatively new to the job, with only a month's experience under her belt, Sherry was quickly adapting to the fast-paced environment of pizza delivery. The work was straightforward, yet it provided her with an opportunity to earn her own money, learn responsibility, and navigate the challenges of balancing work and personal life. However, as fate would have it, her career at Domino's would also lead her into the heart of a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. July 4, 1982, was supposed to be a day of celebration, with fireworks lighting up the sky in honor of Independence Day. It was a day when Americans across the country came together with family and friends to commemorate the nation's history and enjoy the freedoms that came with it. For Sherry, however, it turned into anything but a celebration. Initially not scheduled to work, her plans took an unexpected turn when a colleague, eager to join the day's festivities, asked her to cover her shift. Demonstrating a willingness to help out and perhaps also seeing an opportunity to earn extra wages, Sherry agreed to step in, a decision that would unknowingly change the course of her life forever. That evening, around 9 p.m., as celebrations were underway across Salem, Domino's Pizza received a call. The voice on the other end of the line belonged to a man who identified himself as Dunbar, a middle-aged caller whose request seemed ordinary at first glance. He engaged in a conversation with the employee on duty, discussing the menu and making inquiries about what to order. However, as the call progressed, a peculiar detail emerged. Dunbar mentioned a previous delivery made by a female driver in an orange Volkswagen, asserting that she would be familiar with his address. This detail set off a chain of events that would lead to one of the most perplexing mysteries in Salem's history. After the call ended, it was discovered that the driver mentioned was not scheduled to work that night. In an effort to fulfill the order, the staff attempted to contact Dunbar again, only to find that the callback number provided was linked to the city center motel. During this follow-up call, Dunbar directed the delivery to a new location on Riverhaven Drive near Brown Island Road, a secluded, heavily wooded area adjacent to the Willamette River, far from the bustling streets and celebratory fireworks of Salem. With the order noted and the destination set, Sherry set off in her Ford Pinto, embarking on what was supposed to be a routine delivery. The night, however, had other plans. When Sherry failed to return to Domino's, alarm bells began to ring, setting off a frantic search that would lead to a grim discovery. At 10 p.m., Sherry's car was found abandoned with the engine still idling, an ominous sign that something had gone terribly wrong. Around the vehicle, her hat and several pizza boxes were scattered on the ground, silent witnesses to the events that had unfolded. Among these items, two pieces of evidence stood out: a tire track imprinted on one of the pizza boxes and a boot print on another. These clues painted a harrowing picture of abduction, sparking an investigation that would seek to unravel the mystery of what happened to Sherry Irely that fateful night. As investigators delved into the case, their focus turned to the mysterious caller who had last spoken with Sherry. The name Dunbar and the address he had provided were quickly exposed as fabrications, leading detectives down a labyrinth of dead ends and unanswered questions. The search for Sherry and the quest for justice would become a decades-long ordeal, testing the resolve of a community and leaving an indelible mark on the hearts of those who knew her. The day following Sherry Irely's mysterious disappearance unfolded with an eerie quiet, a stark contrast to the usual hustle and bustle of a Domino's pizza outlet. The employees, still reeling from the shock of their colleagues' vanishing, were greeted with a phone call that momentarily sparked a glimmer of hope. The caller, whose voice bore the weight of anonymity, made a ransom demand for Sherry's safe return. This development, as sudden as it was, promised a potential lead. However, it quickly dissolved into further mystery as the caller ceased all communication thereafter, never reaching out to the police nor making any attempts to collect the ransom money. This peculiar silence from the caller added another layer of complexity to the case, leaving investigators and Sherry's co-workers grappling with unanswered questions. In the days following, the police embarked on an extensive search for clues that might lead to Sherry's whereabouts. Their efforts led them to several eyewitnesses who reported seeing a suspicious older model truck parked on the side of the road around the time Sherry was last seen. Described as a four-wheel drive adorned with large tires and equipped with two spotlights atop the cab, the truck was positioned peculiarly, with its front veering off the road while the rear faced the roadway. This detail, although seemingly minor, painted a picture of premeditation and possible involvement in Sherry's abduction. Despite exhaustive searches and appeals to the public, the truck and its driver remained elusive, their identities shrouded in mystery, leaving a critical piece of the puzzle just out of reach. Approximately 1 month after the chilling events of that fateful night, the investigation took an unexpected turn with the involvement of John Catchings, a psychic investigator from Dallas known for his work on missing persons cases. Catchings reported a startling experience. He awoke at 3 a.m. to the sight of a ghostly figure, a young woman standing at the edge of his bed. Convinced that her appearance was more than a mere figment of his imagination, Catchings believed there was a profound reason behind her visitation. This belief was further reinforced when, 4 days later, he received a package from Salem investigators containing details of Sherry's case. Upon seeing her photograph among the contents, Catchings was struck with the realization that she was the same woman who had appeared to him, leading him to conclude that she was no longer missing but had met a tragic end. Driven by this conviction, Catchings traveled to Oregon, determined to shed light on the darkness surrounding Sherry's case. Accompanied by local law enforcement, he visited the scene of her abduction, hoping to uncover clues to her final resting place. It was there, amidst the haunting silence of the site, that Catchings experienced visions of what he believed transpired on the night of Sherry's disappearance. He envisioned Sherry, lost and searching for an address that eluded her, when suddenly, a pickup truck, illuminated by several lights, approached. The driver, feigning a mistake in the delivery address, lured Sherry out of her car only to seize her and drag her into his vehicle. This vivid reconstruction of events, though speculative, offered a chilling perspective on the possible sequence of events that led to Sherry's abduction. In pursuit of tangible leads, Catchings inquired about suspects who might own a green-colored pickup truck, fitting the description tied to his visions and the eyewitness accounts. As the police relayed the names of potential suspects, one name resonated with Catchings: Daryl J. Wilson. Wilson had previously surfaced as a suspect when his sister-in-law approached the investigators, revealing that he owned a lime green pickup truck, which he had hastily repainted brown merely 8 days following Sherry's disappearance. This act alone cast a shadow of suspicion over Wilson, further compounded by the claim that he had known Sherry, a fact he later denied when questioned by authorities. This denial, set against the backdrop of his actions and the psychic's assertions, wove a complex narrative, intertwining the empirical with the enigmatic in the ongoing quest to unravel the mystery of Sherry Irely's fate. As the investigation proceeded, the inclusion of psychic insights alongside conventional detective work marked a peculiar chapter in the search for Sherry. This convergence of the tangible and the intangible, the factual and the speculated, underscored the desperation and lengths to which those involved in the case were willing to go to find answers. The community, law enforcement, and even individuals beyond the immediate realm of the investigation were united in their hope for resolution, clinging to every piece of information, every lead, no matter how unconventional, in the hope of uncovering the truth behind the disappearance of Sherry Irely. This collective endeavor, though fraught with challenges and uncertainties, reflected a relentless pursuit of justice and a yearning for closure, not just for Sherry's loved ones, but for a community forever altered by the events of that summer night. On the morning of August 21, 1982, a palpable sense of anticipation hung in the air as officers prepared to take a significant step in the investigation of Sherry Irely's disappearance. They agreed to accompany psychic investigator John Catchings to the home of Daryl J. Wilson, a suspect whose name had surfaced in a manner as unconventional as it was intriguing. The visit was not just a routine inquiry. It was a convergence of psychic insight and traditional police work, a testament to the lengths to which investigators were willing to go in their quest for answers. As they approached Wilson's residence, a wave of shock washed over Catchings. Before him stood a white house adorned with pillars, an eerie mirror of the vision he had experienced prior. The home's striking resemblance to his psychic premonition sent a chill down his spine, heightening the sense of foreboding that surrounded the visit. Upon their arrival, Wilson exhibited an unexpected reaction to the proposition of a polygraph test. He refused outright, yet paradoxically expressed a willingness to converse with the psychic. This peculiar stance led to a direct encounter between Catchings and Wilson. Emerging from the car, Catchings confronted the man who he believed held the key to unraveling the mystery of Sherry's fate. During their conversation, Wilson attempted to craft an alibi, claiming he had been camping with friends at Elk Lake on the night of Sherry's abduction, a location approximately 2.5 hours away. However, his account faltered when pressed for details, revealing an 8-hour gap that he could not account for, a window of time that critically encompassed the moment Sherry was taken. John Catchings left that meeting convinced of Wilson's involvement in Sherry's disappearance, a belief that was tragically underscored less than 2 hours later. Police were summoned back to Wilson's home, only to discover that he had committed suicide, a sudden and stark conclusion to the day's events. With his death, any chance of extracting further information from Wilson evaporated, and Sherry's case, once again, was shrouded in silence. The years passed, and the case grew colder, relegated to the files of unsolved mysteries until cold case investigators, years later, decided to reopen Sherry's case. With fresh eyes and advances in criminal profiling, they began to question the initial assumption of Wilson's guilt. Their analysis suggested that Wilson, despite his troubling behavior and tragic end, did not fit the behavioral profile of Sherry's abductor. Known to have been involved in drugs, but with no past criminal history, Wilson was increasingly viewed not as the perpetrator but as a troubled individual with no direct connection to the case. This renewed scrutiny led investigators to consider the possibility of another individual being responsible for Sherry's abduction, someone with a history of similar crimes. Their search through the annals of unsolved cases brought to light the murder of Katie Redmond, a young woman who had vanished under circumstances eerily reminiscent of Sherry's abduction. Redmond's car was found abandoned, with the motor running and signs of a struggle evident, mirroring the scene where Sherry was last seen. Her killer, William Scott Smith, was eventually convicted for her murder and that of another victim, Rebecca Darling, raising the chilling possibility of a serial offender. Smith, who had previously been questioned and denied any involvement in Sherry's disappearance, claimed an alibi of driving a truck in Washington state at the time. However, this alibi was called into question when investigators discovered that Smith had been stopped by police near Salem within hours of Sherry's abduction, directly contradicting his assertions of being elsewhere. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Smith's cellmates. In hushed conversations behind prison walls, Smith had alluded to an encounter with a pizza girl, never mentioning Sherry by name but implying involvement in a crime that bore a haunting resemblance to her abduction. These admissions, captured on cassette tapes by the inmates and handed over to the police, provided a new avenue of investigation, suggesting that Smith's role in the tragic tapestry of events that night might have been more significant than previously believed. As the investigation into Sherry Irely's disappearance deepened, the focus shifted towards unraveling the truth behind Smith's cryptic confessions. The case, once thought to be at a standstill following Wilson's suicide, was now alive with the possibility of new leads, propelling investigators forward in their relentless pursuit of justice for Sherry. This pursuit, marked by the convergence of past and present, psychic insights and forensic evidence, underscored the enduring commitment to solving a case that had long haunted the community and the hearts of those who yearned for closure in the wake of an unfathomable loss. In the unfolding saga of Sherry Irely's disappearance, a pivotal moment arrived in 2007, 25 years after that fateful night which plunged her family and the community of Salem, Oregon, into an abyss of uncertainty and sorrow. The case, which had meandered through a labyrinth of dead ends, psychic visions, and speculative leads, was jolted back into the spotlight when William Scott Smith, a man already serving time for other heinous crimes, was brought in for questioning once again regarding Sherry's abduction and murder. Smith, who had previously managed to evade direct implication in Sherry's case, initially maintained his silence, refusing to divulge any information that could tie him to the crime. However, his resolve wavered when investigators presented him with an offer that piqued his interest: a transfer to a different prison in exchange for his cooperation. Seizing this opportunity as a means to alter his circumstances, albeit marginally, Smith's confession began to unravel the meticulously woven tapestry of lies that had shielded him from justice in Sherry's case. In a chilling recount of the events of July 4, 1982, Smith implicated not only himself but also an accomplice, Roger Nosef, painting a harrowing picture of premeditation and malice. According to Smith, it was Nosef who had placed the call to Domino's Pizza, setting the trap for Sherry under the guise of a routine delivery. As Sherry arrived, unsuspecting and focused on fulfilling her delivery duties, Smith flagged her down, initiating a sequence of actions that would culminate in tragedy. Together, Smith and Nosef overpowered Sherry, dragging her into their truck with a brutality that belied any semblance of humanity. Smith then coldly narrated how they transported her to a secluded area near his parents' home, where he strangled her, extinguishing a young life that had barely begun to unfold. Following this heinous act, he disposed of her body in the Pudding River, a grim resting place he claimed to have used for other victims. Smith's admission revealed a sinister pattern of behavior, linking him to a series of violent acts that had terrorized the community. His detailed account of the abduction not only matched the physical evidence found at the scene, but also included information that had never been disclosed to the public, thereby corroborating his involvement in the crime. Among these details was the specific pizza order that had lured Sherry to her doom, as well as the revelation that he and Nozef had initially intended to abduct another delivery driver for ransom. A nefarious plot that had been thwarted only by their chance selection of Sherry as their victim. Further solidifying Smith's confession was his acknowledgement of the ransom call made to Domino's by Nozef the day after Sherry's disappearance, demanding $50,000 for her safe return. This call, which had remained a closely guarded detail of the investigation, underscored the calculated cruelty of their actions and their willingness to exploit the anguish of Sherry's loved ones for financial gain. Tragically, Roger Nozef, the other architect of this sinister plot, had passed away in 2003, taking with him any possibility of facing justice for his role in the abduction and murder of Sherry Irely. Smith's confession, though a breakthrough, was a stark reminder of the time lost and the lives irreparably damaged by their actions. On December 18, 2007, William Scott Smith entered a guilty plea for the murder of Sherry Irely, a declaration that, while bringing a measure of legal closure to the case, could not undo the pain and suffering inflicted upon Sherry's family, friends, and the community. He was sentenced to life in prison, a fate that, for some, offered a semblance of justice, yet for others, served as a cold consolation for the vibrant life stolen from them. To this day, Sherry Irely has not been found. Her absence is a void that time cannot fill, her memory a reminder of the fragility of life and the shadows that lurk in the hearts of men. Sherry, a young woman of petite stature, with brown hair and blue eyes that once reflected the dreams and aspirations of youth, is remembered not for the manner of her departure from this world, but for the indelible mark she left on those who knew her. The initials TB, tattooed between her left thumb and forefinger, her uniform emblazoned with the colors of the nation on Independence Day, and her spirited presence are the legacies that endure, undiminished by the passage of time. Today, as we contemplate what would have been Sherry's 60th birthday, we are reminded not only of the life she was denied, but also of the enduring need for vigilance, compassion, and the pursuit of justice in a world that can, at times, seem bereft of all three. Her story, a tapestry of hope, tragedy, and the relentless quest for truth, continues to resonate, a poignant testament to the human spirit's capacity to seek light in the darkest of circumstances. Hi everyone, my name is John, and today, I'm going to delve into a chilling tale that gripped headlines. This story is not just about triumph, but also about a shocking fall from grace. It begins in the summer of 2012, during the vibrant and globally watched London Olympics, where a young Puerto Rican boxer, Felix Vero Sanchez, captivated the world. He was heralded as a diamond, one of the brightest prospects Puerto Rico had ever produced. Expected to win titles and gold medals, Felix's future seemed destined for greatness, his talent and drive pointing straight to the top. But fast forward to 2021, and Felix's name was circling the globe again, not for his athletic prowess, but as a key figure in a criminal case. This turn of events is a grim tale of how a teenage attachment morphed into a toxic obsession, leading to a horrific tragedy. It's also the story of how Felix, once celebrated and even touted by the two-time Olympic champion Vasily Lomachenko, found himself facing a potential death sentence, only to end up with a life sentence in prison. Despite overwhelming evidence and the confessions of an accomplice, Felix to this day denies any guilt. Felix was born in the lively city of San Juan, Puerto Rico, on May 19, 1993. He grew up in a large, modest family. From a young age, he was passionate about sports. Initially, Felix dreamed of a career in baseball, but his path took a dramatic turn due to a childhood incident. At the age of 9, during a visit from a family friend who brought along a son of the same age, Felix got into a fight with the boy. The scuffle ended with their parents breaking it up, and Felix's father made a remark that would change the course of his son's life. He suggested that if Felix wanted to fight, he should do it with boxing gloves on. Taking his father's words to heart, Felix asked to be enrolled in a local gym. There, he instantly fell in love with boxing. His dedication was evident as he quickly ascended through the ranks of the sport. By 16, he clinched the Pan American Junior Championships. The following year, he won the national championship in Puerto Rico, and soon after, he competed in the 2012 Olympics in London, reaching the quarterfinals. Felix's professional career was equally stellar. He fought 29 times, securing 27 victories, many of them by knockout. In 2014, he was lauded for delivering the Knockout of the Year against Sergio Villanueva. By the next year, he won the WBO Latino title, which he defended multiple times over 2 years. His prowess in the ring led many to believe that he was on a fast track to becoming a legend in world boxing. Now, let's shift focus to another key person in this story, Kayla Rodriguez. Born in November 1993 in San Juan, Kayla Marlene Rodriguez Ortiz was raised in a loving family with her parents, Jose and Kayla Rodriguez, her sister Bears Nicole, and her stepbrother Jonathan from her mother's previous marriage. Kayla was bright, outgoing, and performed well in school. She had a profound love for animals and aspired to become a veterinarian. Kayla and Felix went to the same school and had known each other since they were children. Their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship during their teenage years, around 2011. Their relationship, marked by its ups and downs, would later become a focal point in a narrative that shifted dramatically from the sports pages to the criminal section of newspapers worldwide. Life took a tumultuous turn for Kayla Rodriguez when her parents decided to divorce. Amidst the upheaval, her mother Kayla relocated to Florida, leaving Kayla and her sister Bears, both now adults, to forge their paths in San Juan. Despite the physical distance between them and their mother, the sisters maintained a tight bond, frequently sharing the minutiae of their lives, from triumphs to setbacks. Meanwhile, Felix, fresh from his Olympic debut and burgeoning boxing career, found himself embroiled in a complicated love life. At just 18, he started a relationship with Elisa Maria Santiago Sierra, a 14-year-old schoolgirl with aspirations of modeling. The relationship, given the green light by Elisa's parents, quickly blossomed amidst plans for a shared future. Felix, known for his magnetic charm and rising fame, attracted many admirers, and his romantic engagements didn't end with Elisa. Despite his serious relationship with Elisa, Felix continued to see Kayla, his childhood sweetheart. This secret was known to Kisha's sister, Bears, and her mother, Kayla, both of whom disapproved of the ongoing affair. The situation was rife with contradictions. On one side, Elisa viewed herself as Felix's true love and future wife, blissfully unaware of his infidelities. On the other, Kayla, deeply in love with Felix since their school days, held on to a hope that perhaps she could be his one true love, despite knowing about his engagement to Elisa. In 2016, Felix and Elisa tied the knot. By then, Elisa had made a name for herself as a model and social media influencer and had opened a beauty studio specializing in eyelash extensions. Their wedding seemed to mark the beginning of a new chapter, but just months later, Felix suffered severe injuries in a motorcycle accident. The accident left him hospitalized with head injuries and multiple lacerations. His trainer, Ricky Marquez, was deeply concerned that Felix might never return to his peak form. However, Felix made a miraculous recovery and was soon back in the ring, defying all dire predictions. In September 2019, Felix shared a touching moment on social media, a picture of Elisa heavily pregnant, captioned with anticipation of meeting his daddy's princess. The following month, he joyously announced the birth of their daughter, Miranda Verdejo Santiago. Publicly, Felix portrayed himself as a devoted husband and father, an image of familial perfection. However, beneath this veneer of an idyllic family life, Felix continued his clandestine meetings with Kayla. Elisa suspected the infidelity. Felix would break down and promise to end the affair, yet never did. Kayla herself was caught in a cycle of pain and attachment, attempting to sever ties, only to be pulled back in by Felix's persistent refusals to let her go. This toxic back and forth gnawed at her resolve, trapping her in a situation that promised more heartache than happiness. Kayla Rodriguez had envisioned a life surrounded by animals, her lifelong passion. Fulfilling this dream, she successfully secured a position at a veterinary center specializing in medicine and aesthetics. Her colleagues admired her dedication, describing her as hardworking and highly responsible. Kayla's personal life, filled with the companionship of her 2 dogs and a cat, seemed to bring her joy, a stark contrast to the tumult of her romantic entanglements. The ongoing affair with Felix, however, was fraught with control and threats. Despite knowing Felix was married and had a daughter, Kayla's love for him, which began in high school, hadn't waned. Felix's behavior became increasingly possessive, threatening harm if Kayla were to find comfort in another's arms. This left her isolated, tethered to a man who could not offer her the future she deserved. In 2020, Eliza, Felix's wife, stumbled upon messages that exposed his infidelities, including his ongoing affair with Kayla. Enraged, she confronted Felix, kicking him out and threatening divorce and to restrict his access to their daughter. These threats seemed to momentarily sway Felix, and for a time, he ceased his visits to Kayla. However, the lure of their connection wasn't easily dismissed, and secret meetings soon resumed. By April 2021, Kayla's life took an unexpected turn. She was pregnant. Panic initially gripped her as she confirmed her fears with a pregnancy test from a local drugstore. After sharing the news with her sister, who had been a confidant through her rocky relationship, Kayla resolved to keep the baby. Despite Felix's volatile potential reaction, she hoped somewhere in her heart that he might embrace the prospect of their child. When Kayla broke the news to Felix, his reaction was far from joyous. Angered and fearful of the scandal an illegitimate child would cause, he demanded she terminate the pregnancy. Kayla's firm refusal only intensified his fury. Felix's insistence was relentless, as he feared the damage the news could do to his already waning boxing career. Determined to prove her sincerity, Kayla agreed to meet Felix in a public place to show him the medical confirmation of her pregnancy, a setting they chose often to avoid public scrutiny. But unknown to her, Felix had already devised a dark plan. He reached out to Luis Antonio Cadiz, an old acquaintance with criminal connections, imploring him to help eliminate the problem. Despite Luis's initial hesitations due to his own brushes with the law, Felix's promise of a hefty payout persuaded him to agree. As the planned day approached, Felix set the meeting for the evening of April 29th. Eager and anxious, Kayla hoped for a resolution, perhaps even a positive turn in their relationship. After setting the details, she called her sister again, sharing everything about the upcoming meeting and her mixed feelings of hope and apprehension. Kayla Rodriguez harbored a faint hope that Felix would accept her pregnancy and cease his insistence on an abortion. Despite her sister Bear's deep concerns about Felix's aggressive behavior and threats, Kayla felt compelled to meet him, believing perhaps that seeing the doctor's confirmation would change his mind. At the agreed time, Kayla drove to the designated meeting spot in her Kia Forte. Felix arrived in his pickup truck, discreetly transporting Luis in the back. Without hesitation, Kayla joined Felix in his vehicle and presented the medical documents confirming her pregnancy. Felix's reaction was grim. He reiterated his demand for an abortion. As Kayla tearfully refused, their conversation escalated into a full-blown quarrel, culminating in Felix striking Kayla, causing her to lose consciousness. In these dire moments, Felix acted with chilling precision. He retrieved a syringe filled with a high dose of illegal drugs, prepared earlier by Luis, and injected Kayla, ensuring she remained unconscious. Felix and Luis then bound her with wire, weighed her down with a concrete block, and concealed her body under a tarp in the back of the truck. The two men drove to the desolate bridge over San Jose Lagoon. Ensuring the coast was clear, they callously threw Kayla, still alive but incapacitated, into the water below. To eliminate any chance of survival, they fired several shots into the water where they had discarded her body. After the grim deed, each man returned home as if nothing had happened. The next day, when Kayla failed to show up for work at the Veterinary Medicine and Aesthetics Center, her absence alarmed her colleagues. Known for her reliability, her unexplained no-show prompted calls to her family. When her sister Bears couldn't reach her, she visited Kayla's home, finding only the hungry pets who had been left unattended. Panicked and fearing the worst, bears alerted their mother and the police, conveying her suspicions and the threats KLA had faced. She even reached out to Felix, who feigned ignorance, claiming he had been home all evening. The missing woman's mother, Kayla, flew in from Florida, clinging to hope that Felix might have coerced KLA into an unwanted abortion at a private clinic, refusing to entertain the grim possibility of her daughter's death. The police investigation began with routine inquiries among KLA's neighbors and colleagues, who noticed nothing unusual. Meanwhile, the case gained traction on social media, with the public urged to share any information about KLA's whereabouts, especially given her connection to a renowned athlete and her pregnancy. The search for KLA Rodriguez thus unfolded amid growing public interest and media scrutiny, painting a portrait of a troubled relationship entangled with a celebrity sports figure, a narrative that only intensified as details of her disappearance spread. The tragic discovery of KLA Rodriguez's body transformed her story into a focal point for national outrage and media frenzy. Reporters eagerly sought interviews with anyone connected to Rodriguez, especially her family members, who openly voiced their suspicions and directly implicated Felix in the grim events. They detailed their fears and the turbulent relationship between KLA and Felix, adding emotional depth to the already gripping narrative. On April 30th, the city's uneasy attention shifted when Kisha's Kia Forte was found abandoned on the east side of the city. The car contained her personal belongings and documents, but no signs of struggle were apparent inside, which provided a sliver of hope that she might still be found alive. However, this hope was short-lived. The very next day, a passerby walking over the bridge above the San Jose Lagoon noticed an odd shape in the shallow waters below. Alerting the police led to the heartbreaking confirmation that the body recovered was indeed KLA's. Although her body was severely affected by the days in water, she was unmistakably identified by a distinctive tattoo on her arm. As the news of KLA's death spread, the city erupted in grief and anger. Residents spontaneously gathered, staging rallies and demanding justice for KLA and accountability for her killers. Amidst this public outcry, Felix was brought in for questioning by the police. Despite his vehement denials and his claim of having been at home on the night KLA disappeared, inconsistencies in his story soon emerged. His initial release on his own recognizance did little to quell the public or investigative fervor. Eliza, Felix's wife, became a pivotal figure in the case during her interrogation. Although she acknowledged her husband's infidelity with KLA, she was shocked to learn of the pregnancy and contradicted Felix's alibi by confirming he was not home on the night of the murder. This statement significantly weakened Felix's defense. Investigators diligently reviewed traffic surveillance footage, which captured Felix's pickup truck and Kisha's Kia Forte traveling together towards the bridge, clearly showing that Kisha was not driving her own car. This evidence led to the seizure and forensic examination of Felix's vehicle, where investigators discovered hair belonging to Kisha, further implicating Felix in her death. Luis, Felix's accomplice, was the first to break under the pressure. He turned himself in, hoping to mitigate his punishment by cooperating with the authorities and revealing the details of their plan. Unlike Luis, Felix remained uncooperative, refusing to engage with the investigation and maintaining his innocence despite the mounting evidence against him. A firearm, officially registered to Felix and identified as being used to shoot at KLA in the water, was confiscated, and cell phone records substantiated the claims that Felix, Luis, and KLA were together near the bridge on that fatal evening. The national attention reached its peak with KLA's funeral on May 8th, broadcasted across the country. The ceremony was a somber affair, attended by many who followed her story, a tragic testament to a life cut brutally short and a community's resolve to seek justice for a beloved local who fell victim to a terrible crime. The funeral of KLA Rodriguez became not only a solemn farewell but also a powerful call to action against gender violence and a demand for justice. Her coffin, carried not in a traditional hearse but a white carriage strewn with white flower petals from above, symbolized purity and mourning. The ceremony drew attention from across Puerto Rico, with celebrities, athletes, politicians, and public figures uniting in condemnation of the heinous crime and expressing their sorrow and outrage. In the judicial aftermath, Felix Verdejo faced severe charges including carjacking, kidnapping, premeditated murder, and the murder of an unborn child. These charges could have led to the death penalty. However, from the onset, KLA's family requested a life sentence instead, preferring a punishment that would see Felix confined and reflecting on his crimes for life. The trial itself faced delays due to the global coronavirus pandemic, but eventually proceeded in virtual mode. The evidence presented was damning, particularly the testimony of Luis, who confessed his involvement in the preparation and execution of the crime. He admitted to obtaining the drugs used to sedate KLA, as well as the materials used to weigh down her body in the water. Despite Felix's persistent denials of any involvement, the array of evidence against him, including digital data and forensic findings, painted a clear picture of his guilt. In a sad turn of personal affairs, Felix's wife, Elisa, filed for divorce shortly after his arrest. She sought to distance herself from the scandal, focusing on her eyelash extension business and caring for their young daughter, Miranda. Unfortunately, Elisa faced significant backlash, with anonymous threats being made against her and Miranda, reflecting the public's anger and confusion regarding who was truly responsible for orchestrating the crime. As the trial drew to a close in 2023, the jury was ready to deliver its verdict after reviewing all the evidence and hearing from all witnesses. Both Felix Verdejo and his accomplice, Luis Cadiz, were found guilty on all counts. However, the sentencing was deferred, with a further hearing scheduled for mid-November 2023. It is anticipated that both men will receive life sentences without the possibility of parole, a somber conclusion to a tragic saga. Thank you for following this story with me, John. Stay tuned and subscribe to the channel for more riveting stories like this one. There are many more unfolding stories ahead. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today, we dive deep into a chilling case that shook the peaceful town of Deltona, Florida. In February 2018, this quiet community on the eastern Atlantic coast was rocked by the brutal murder of a young man named Patrick de la Cerda. Patrick, only 25 years old at the time of his death, was found lifeless in his own home. The severity of his injuries hinted that the killer held a deep personal grudge against him. The Patrick de la Cerda case is a disturbing tale of what appeared to be an almost perfect, meticulously planned crime, one that could have easily remained unsolved. Although a suspect was named almost immediately, no direct evidence surfaced initially to substantiate his guilt. Investigator Chad Weaver, who led the case, knew from the start that this was a real-life puzzle worthy of a screenplay adaptation. But who was Patrick de la Cerda? Let's take a moment to understand the man whose life was tragically cut short. Born in June 1992 in Miami, Florida, Patrick grew up in a vibrant, bustling metropolitan area. His father, Max de la Cerda, hailed from Spain, and his mother, Patricia Ranza, was a native of France who moved to the United States in the 80s. They soon married and welcomed their son into what was a loving, happy family environment. Patrick was raised surrounded by love, care, and mutual respect. He was an intelligent and sociable young man who excelled in his studies and had a knack for making friends effortlessly. He was the kind of person who could light up a room and draw people to him with his charisma and friendly demeanor. From a young age, he was very close to his parents, who spared no effort or expense to ensure he received a good education and grew into a commendable man. His father, a lifelong construction worker and an excellent specialist in his field, inspired Patrick to follow in his footsteps. After graduating high school, Patrick enrolled in the construction faculty at university, aiming to continue his father's legacy. During his university years, a significant family change occurred. After nearly a quarter century together, his parents decided to divorce. It was an amicable separation, free of any scandal or contentious property disputes. Patricia moved to Deltona, a quieter part of the state, and remarried, while Patrick chose to stay in Miami with his father. The two worked together as respected professionals in the construction industry. Despite the divorce, the family remained close. They kept in touch regularly, sharing life updates, joys, and challenges. Patrick frequently visited his mother in Deltona, always keeping her in the loop about his life's happenings. In his personal life, Patrick, with his charming French-Spanish heritage, was quite popular among his peers, particularly with women. However, he never sought fleeting relationships. Influenced by his parents' long marriage, he dreamed of finding a deep, lasting love and building a family like the one he grew up in. This quest for love led him to the internet, where on the advice of a friend, he created a profile on a popular dating site. Skeptical about finding true love online, Patrick didn't have high hopes as he scrolled through profiles one evening in June 2017. That was until he stumbled upon a profile that caught his eye, a striking brunette named Jessica Devaney. Her big, expressive eyes and bright, engaging smile enchanted him instantly. Compelled, he sent her a message. Jessica responded, and what started as a simple exchange of messages soon blossomed into something more. Born in 1988 in Orlando, Jessica had studied banking at a local university and was working at a bank branch in her hometown. As their conversations grew deeper and more frequent, Patrick found himself increasingly drawn to her. This was the beginning of a new chapter in Patrick's life, one filled with promise and new love. Little did he know, the events that were to unfold would turn his story into one marked by tragedy and mystery. Jessica was immediately drawn to Patrick as well. The connection between them was palpable right from their initial conversations on the dating site. Within days of active messaging, they decided to take the next step by exchanging phone numbers. This marked the beginning of nightly phone calls that often stretched into the early hours. They shared everything with each other, from mundane daily details to their hopes and dreams, quickly establishing a foundation of mutual sympathy and trust. Feeling ready to meet in person after weeks of intense virtual connection, they chose a location halfway between their homes for their first date. It was a deliberate decision to mitigate the distance that physically separated them. From the moment they met, Patrick knew that Jessica was the woman he had been searching for all his life. She also felt a strong connection, although she was initially a bit hesitant about their age difference, with her being 4 years his senior. On his way home after their first meeting, Patrick couldn't contain his excitement. He called his mother, Patricia, to tell her about Jessica, declaring that she was the one he wanted to marry and build a future with. Patricia could hear the joy in her son's voice, understood his seriousness, and was overjoyed for him. The couple maintained their long-distance relationship for several months, with their weekends becoming the cherished moments of reunion. Typically, they would meet at a rented hotel in some quaint, secluded location where they could focus solely on each other. But the goodbye on Sunday nights was always hard, as they parted ways to return to their respective weekday routines and jobs. In December 2017, Patrick made a significant decision to move to Deltona, closer to where his mother lived and, more importantly, closer to Jessica. He purchased a house in a quiet neighborhood and began making renovations to transform it into a cozy home for them. While Jessica was not yet able to leave her job and move in immediately, they planned a housewarming party for the early spring of the following year. As they welcomed the new year together, Patrick planned a special surprise for Jessica. He organized a fireworks display in the backyard of his new home. Amidst the dazzling lights, he took a momentous step. Kneeling down and presenting a ring, he asked Jessica to marry him. Overwhelmed with happiness, Jessica agreed without hesitation. Patrick admitted that finding the perfect engagement ring had been a challenge. None of the rings he saw in stores met his expectations. They lacked the beauty and refinement he felt the occasion deserved. So, he settled for the best available option to propose before the new year, but also custom-ordered an exclusive ring, designing it himself to add a personal touch to their engagement. 2 months after their engagement, as they were busy with wedding plans and the forthcoming housewarming, tragedy struck. They envisioned a grand wedding either on the beaches of Miami or perhaps even in France, reflecting Patrick's heritage. On February 27, 2018, a day that started like any other, Max de la Cerda, Patrick's father, received a call that turned their world upside down. A courier, unable to get a response from Patrick at his address, contacted Max, listed as an alternative contact. The courier reported that although the delivery was made, Patrick wasn't answering the door or his phone. This was unusual for Patrick, known for his punctuality and responsiveness. Alarmed, yet tied up at work, Max could not leave immediately to check on his son. Instead, he reached out to Jessica, asking her to check on Patrick, fearing something was amiss. Little did they know, This day would unravel a sequence of events that would lead to heartbreak and a mystery enveloping the whole family. Jessica had been trying to reach Patrick since early in the morning, but there was no response to her messages and calls. When she shared her concerns with Patrick's father, Max, he sensed that something was seriously wrong. Something must have happened to Patrick, he said with a tone of urgency. Without wasting any more time, Jessica dropped everything and rushed to Patrick's house as fast as she could. Upon arrival, she noticed Patrick's car parked in the driveway, indicating he hadn't left the house. With her own key, Jessica entered the yard and called out to Patrick several times, but there was no reply. Her heart pounding, she carefully opened the front door. The sight that met her eyes was horrifying. Patrick was lying near the entrance, unmoving in a pool of his own blood. Jessica, in a state of shock, immediately dialed for emergency services. But when the paramedics arrived, there was nothing they could do. Patrick was already gone. By the time the police arrived, a distraught Jessica was sobbing uncontrollably in the backyard, the very place where Patrick had proposed to her just 2 months earlier. When one of the officers approached her to gather some initial information, all she could say through her tears was that she knew who had done this. She believed that her ex-boyfriend, a rich and powerful man, had destroyed her life and massacred her lover. To understand who would want to harm Patrick, a seemingly well-liked individual with no apparent enemies, we need to look back to when Patrick and Jessica first met. At that time, Jessica was in a relationship with Gregory Bender, a wealthy businessman who owned his own investment fund. They had met during her student years. Gregory was 20 years older than her, and he swept her off her feet with lavish gifts and trips to exotic resorts. Initially, Jessica thought she had found the love of her life. However, as time passed, she started noticing unsettling behaviors. Gregory was overly controlling, monitoring her movements and who she spoke with. If Jessica attracted any male attention, Gregory quickly chased the admirers away with threats. Despite being together for nearly 8 years, Gregory never introduced Jessica to his family or friends. They would meet or vacation only on his terms, and he rarely invited her to his house, claiming his busy schedule as the reason. Jessica longed for a normal family life, including children, but Gregory always postponed these discussions. When she tried to end the relationship, he proposed with a ring in a desperate bid to keep her. She accepted, yet nothing changed. They continued to live separately and met only when Gregory decided. The turning point came when Gregory was hospitalized following a car accident. Jessica visited his house to gather some of his belongings and encountered a woman she had never seen before. When Jessica revealed that she was engaged to Gregory, showing her ring, the woman laughed and showed her own ring, declaring herself as Gregory's legal wife. This revelation shattered Jessica, and she decided to leave Gregory for good. Despite the breakup, Gregory became obsessive, refusing to let Jessica go. He begged her to return, promising to divorce his wife, but nothing changed. Exhausted by his false promises, Jessica decided to move on and created a profile on a dating site, where she met Patrick. Determined to start anew, she informed Gregory of her decision to break up definitively. However, Gregory couldn't accept her decision. At first, he tried to persuade her to return, then resorted to threats and harassment. When he realized these tactics were futile, he hired professionals to hack into Jessica's accounts to find out who she was dating. After discovering Patrick's identity, Gregory began sending him threatening messages, demanding that he break up with Jessica and leave her to him. Patrick remained unfazed by the threats, believing they would not escalate beyond intimidating words. However, Jessica was genuinely frightened, aware of her ex-boyfriend Gregory's extensive resources and connections, not to mention his large collection of firearms. Fearing for their safety, Jessica suggested they might break up to avoid any harm, but Patrick steadfastly refused. Instead, they decided to take action by going to the police and providing evidence of Gregory's stalking and threats. With the evidence they presented, the police were able to secure a restraining order against Gregory, prohibiting him from approaching or contacting them by any means. Additionally, he was ordered to surrender all firearms in his possession. For a time, this measure seemed to work, and life returned to a semblance of normalcy for the couple. However, Jessica remained uneasy and convinced Patrick of the need to install CCTV cameras around their home. She feared that Gregory might ignore the restraining order and pose a direct threat to their safety. Let's return to the tragic day of February 27, 2018. During the initial crime scene investigation, criminalists quickly dismissed the possibility of a robbery as the motive. The nature of the attack was intensely personal. Patrick's body bore the evidence. For gunshot wounds, one in the thigh, one in the chest, and two in the head, along with injuries that suggested he had fallen from a ladder. The positioning of his body, lying between the front door and the stairs leading to the second floor, led investigators to theorize that the killer had waited inside the house. It appeared that as Patrick entered and began to ascend the stairs, the assailant emerged, shooting him first in the thigh. As Patrick fell down the stairs, the attacker followed, shooting him in the chest and finally executing him with 2 shots to the head. The murder weapon was not found at the scene, and it was noted to be a rare model of pistol, not easily obtainable. Shell casings were recovered, 1 upstairs and 2 more downstairs. Curiously, a 4th casing was missing, presumed taken by the killer, possibly as a twisted trophy. Despite Jessica's assertion that she knew who was responsible, the police initially considered other suspects, including a neighbor of Patrick's who had had a severe conflict with him months earlier. This neighbor, a combat veteran with a mental disorder, had previously mistaken Patrick for an intruder and had a history of aggressive behavior. Though detained and interrogated, he had a solid alibi confirmed by multiple witnesses. With robbery ruled out, nothing was stolen and valuables were untouched. The only missing items were the hard disks from the surveillance system, eliminating any chance to review footage of who entered or exited the house on the day of the murder. No fingerprints, shoe prints, or DNA were found. It was a meticulously planned crime. Although the investigation strongly suspected Gregory's involvement, concrete evidence was lacking. The police strategized by asking Jessica to confront Gregory over the phone, hoping he might slip up. During the call, she tearfully accused him of the murder, but Gregory, likely sensing the trap, maintained his innocence and expressed his condolences, never deviating from his calm demeanor. Efforts to provoke a confession or a mistake from Gregory proved futile. The police could not detain him without more concrete evidence, and while he remained a person of interest, he adhered strictly to the terms of the restraining order and seemed to have moved on from Jessica. The investigation was at a standstill, with detectives grasping at straws to find any lead that might link Gregory to the crime. The police received a call from Deora Sanchez-Bender, who claimed to have crucial information about the Patrick Dira case. She was immediately invited to the station for an interview. During her statement, Deora revealed that shortly before the crime, she had discovered a strange notebook on her husband's desk in his office. Curiously flipping through it, she found a detailed plan of some stranger's house, accompanied by an odd sequence of actions. Although she initially dismissed it, the moment she saw a news report detailing the brutal murder of Patrick Dira, which included the floor plan of his house, she immediately recognized the sketches from her unfaithful husband's notebook. Realizing the gravity of her findings, Deora, who was on the brink of divorce, decided it was time to share this information with the authorities. This tip gave the police sufficient grounds to search the home of the suspected perpetrator. They discovered the mysterious notebook mentioned by Gregory's wife in his office, but the pages containing the house plan and other incriminating notes were missing. However, these were soon found in a trash can within the office. Gregory had torn them out, crumpled them up, and discarded them, presumably believing that no search of his home would occur due to a lack of direct evidence against him. The contents of these pages were chilling. They not only included the layout of the house, but also a detailed crime plan emphasizing precautions like turning off his phone, wearing gloves, and applying a special compound to his shoe soles to avoid leaving traces. The records revealed that Gregory had meticulously stalked Patrick, knew his routines, and was aware of the surveillance systems at Patrick's home. He also made plans to dispose of the murder weapon along with any incriminating clothing and shoes. His downfall was his assumption that these records would never be discovered, coupled with his wife's unexpected curiosity. Moreover, during the search, police found the 4th missing shell casing, which Gregory had intended to take as a trophy, on a table inside a cigar box. Forensic analysis confirmed it matched the casings from the crime scene. The The trial began more than 3 years after the crime, in May 2021. During this time, Gregory had hired top-notch lawyers who were well prepared for the case. Jessica was a key witness, detailing her long relationship with Gregory, his marriage deceit, and the subsequent threats made against her and Patrick. She presented saved screenshots of their correspondence and phone records as evidence. However, Gregory's defense team attempted to shift the blame onto Jessica, alleging that her actions had provoked Gregory's behavior because she had moved on to a new relationship while still officially with him, which they claimed wounded his pride and ego. They also accused her of being mercantile, enjoying the lavish gifts from her wealthy suitor. They dismissed the documented murder plans found in Gregory's trash as mere fantasies of a jilted lover and argued that the search of Gregory's home was illegal, claiming the evidence found, including the shell casing, could have been planted. Despite these arguments, and even a moment during the trial where Gregory's now ex-wife, Deora Sanchez, retracted her initial statements and expressed doubts about Gregory's capability for murder, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder after hours of deliberation. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As the judge announced the verdict, Gregory's gaze was fixed on Jessica. His look so intense it left her feeling nauseated and almost caused her a panic attack. She sat next to Patrick's mother, sobbing and struggling to breathe. Despite numerous appeals from Gregory and his legal team, all were rejected. The high-profile nature of the case, portraying a wealthy businessman who brutally murdered a working-class man and tried to escape justice, resonated deeply with the public and received extensive media coverage. Jessica Devaney says she now feels safe, continues to cherish Patrick's memory, wears the ring he gave her, and has maintained a close relationship with his parents, who have come to see her as their own daughter. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to not miss new stories from around the world. See you soon, and take care. Hi everyone, my name is John, and today we're going to delve into another shocking true crime case that will leave you speechless. The Temple family, hailing from Katy, Texas, was a well-respected and beloved fixture in their community. David, the patriarch, was an exceptional athlete who led the Katy High School football team to an undefeated season in 1986 as the star linebacker and heart of the defense. His impressive skills earned him recognition far beyond the confines of the football field. David was a local celebrity in Katy. Everyone wanted to be his friend. As David's success continued, he decided to further his academic and athletic pursuits by enrolling in Stephen F. Austin State University in the fall of 1990. The university offered him a full scholarship to play football, and David eagerly accepted the offer. During his time at the university, David's skills on the field were nothing short of extraordinary. His physical presence and relentless aggression earned him the nickname, the Temple of Doom. David's time at the university was also marked by a chance encounter with Belinda Lucas, a physical education major who worked as an assistant with the football program. David and Belinda's connection was instantaneous, and they quickly fell deeply in love. Belinda was a charming blonde, and David was captivated by her beauty. From the moment they began dating, David was eager to spend every moment with her. He would leave heartfelt notes on her windshield whenever he saw her car on campus and surprise her with roses. After 11 months of dating, David decided it was time to take their relationship to the next level. With great care and consideration, he asked Belinda's parents for their hand in marriage. Belinda's parents, impressed by David's genuine character and respectful demeanor, happily agreed. David was determined to propose to Belinda in the most romantic way possible, creating a perfect memory. He took her out onto the football field, and as they walked towards the 50-yard line, anticipation filled the air. David got down on one knee and asked Belinda to be his wife. Belinda couldn't contain her excitement as she happily agreed to be David's wife. In the fall of 1992, David and Belinda married in an intimate ceremony surrounded by their closest friends and family. After their marriage, David and Belinda decided to settle in Katy, Texas. Belinda pursued her passion for education by becoming a teacher at David's alma mater, Katy High School. David found his calling as a coach and teacher at Hastings High School. As time went on, David and Belinda's desire for a family grew stronger. 3 years after their marriage, Belinda gave birth to their son, Evan. Becoming a parent was a moment of immense joy for both of them. According to David's loved ones, he was an exemplary husband who supported Belinda in every aspect of their life, ensuring she had everything she needed. However, other people who knew the couple painted a different picture of their marriage. Some friends of the couple witnessed their interactions and felt David controlled Belinda. They heard him make derogatory comments about her body and the way she took care of their son and upkeep their house. According to Belinda's twin, who spent time with David and Belinda during the holidays, David made frequent jokes at the expense of Belinda's big butt. Additionally, multiple individuals reported that David referred to Belinda as fat and ugly and verbally attacked her family, calling them crazy white trash. He actively hindered Belinda and their son Evan from spending time with Belinda's family. David appeared visibly upset with Belinda's inability to shed the weight she had gained during her pregnancy with their son Evan. His frustration seemed to stem from his dissatisfaction with having a spouse who had let herself go physically. However, despite David's less-than-ideal behavior, it was generally agreed that he genuinely adored their son and was a doting, loving father. Over time, David started to distance himself from his wife, Belinda. One day, David attended a high school reunion, where he found himself reacquainted with an old flame. The following day, he informed a friend that he had hooked up with an ex-girlfriend during the reunion. David started to spend more and more time away from home, telling Belinda he was at happy hour with his fellow football coaches. However, in reality, David was frequenting exotic dance clubs, where he would engage in casual encounters with other women. Belinda sat at home, feeling a sense of unease in her marriage as she played with her son. She couldn't help but wonder if something was amiss. Belinda confided in her friends, expressing her suspicions that David might be cheating. However, she hesitated to believe these thoughts, knowing there had to be a reasonable explanation for David's increasing absence from home. When Belinda examined their credit card statements, she became concerned. She noticed a high number of charges from exotic nightclubs, which raised questions about David's activities. When she confronted him about these outings, he presented feeble excuses, which Belinda reluctantly decided to accept. In the aftermath of this incident, David told Belinda that he no longer wanted to share an account with her and instead opened his own credit card. This development further heightened Belinda's concerns and left her isolated from her husband. By the summer of 1998, Belinda and David's relationship was strained, and the couple were fighting a lot. They went long periods without talking to one another, which added further stress to their relationship. One night, Belinda decided to confront David about their problems. She asked him if he still loved her, to which David responded with a vague answer, stating that he didn't know. However, by the next morning, everything had changed. David had had a change of heart, telling Belinda he did love her. When Belinda heard David's words, she was overjoyed. By January 1999, David and Belinda had seemingly repaired their relationship. Belinda discovered she was pregnant with their second child, and to their joy, they found out they were expecting a baby girl. This news filled the couple with excitement and joy. On January 11, 1999, Belinda was 8 months pregnant with their baby girl, and Evan, their son, was 4 years old. The day began normally. Belinda was teaching at Katy High School when she got called to the front office to take a phone call. Evan's daycare center was on the phone, informing Belinda that he had a fever and needed to be picked up around lunchtime. Belinda drove to Evan's daycare center and brought him home. David arrived home about half an hour later. As Belinda needed to return to work because she had a meeting later that afternoon that she could not afford to miss, David took care of Evan. Belinda's meeting lasted until around 3:30 p.m., and she arrived home approximately 15 minutes later. When she came home, she appeared to be extremely tired. At that time, Evan's fever had subsided, and David decided to take him out to do something to give Belinda some rest. David and Evan left the house at 4 p.m. and drove to a park located a few minutes away. However, they didn't remain there for long. David decided to continue driving to a larger park several miles away. Before heading to the larger park, David stopped at a Brookshire Brothers grocery store to purchase a drink for his son and cat food. However, by the time he arrived at the store, it was already after 4:30 p.m., and David changed his mind about taking Evan to the larger park. Instead, he decided to head back home. While driving home, David decided to make a quick stop at Home Depot to purchase brackets for shelving for the baby's nursery. The store's CCTV footage captured David and his son entering the store. David arrived home with Evan at 5:30 p.m. When David walked up to the back door, he noticed it was partially open and glass was everywhere. That sight immediately raised red flags, and David had a feeling that the house had been robbed. Thinking quickly, David picked up his son and ran to the neighbor's house, banging on their front door and shouting, "Let me in!" The neighbor, hearing the commotion, quickly ran to the front door. David handed his son over to the neighbor and asked him to call 911 urgently, explaining that it looked as if his house had been burglarized. Worried about his pregnant wife, David left his son in the neighbor's care and rushed back to his home. As he rushed inside, he shouted Belinda's name, his voice filled with concern. He ran up the stairs and made his way to the master bedroom. In the master bedroom closet, he found Belinda's lifeless body, and his world came crashing down. David discovered Belinda's lifeless body in a closet, covered in blood. He immediately called the police, and 2 officers from the Harris County Constable's office responded to the 911 call. Upon arrival, they encountered a barrier in the form of the couple's dog, Shaka, who was barking and growling, preventing their entry. The officers considered shooting the dog as a last resort, but were spared from doing so when David unexpectedly stepped out of the backyard and calmly informed them that his wife had been shot and was dead inside. The officers ordered David to take control of the dog before they could enter the premises. David complied, placing Shaka in the garage. He was then placed in a patrol vehicle as medical personnel and additional officers arrived. However, during the interview at the police station, David became agitated and aggressive, refusing to look the detectives in the eye and fidgeting in his chair. After 3.5 hours of questioning, the detectives still had no idea if David was a suspect in his wife's murder, as his answers were inconclusive and uncooperative. Crime scene investigators found Belinda lying face down in the master bedroom closet with a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Her long hair covered the injury, and she was fully dressed with her shoes still on. The clothes hanging in the closet were covered in her blood and brain matter. An autopsy confirmed that she had been shot by a 12-gauge shotgun, which fractured her skull. The medical examiner determined that Belinda had been killed sometime on January 11th, but was unable to identify a specific time of death due to the body's state of lividity. The examination of the house revealed evidence that the shooter had entered through the back patio door by breaking a panel of glass. However, the investigator noticed that the pattern of broken glass suggested that the window was broken while the back door was already open. This finding raised suspicions about the circumstances surrounding the break-in. The investigators' analysis led them to conclude that if the back door had been closed when the glass was broken, they would have expected to see the glass scattered closer to the couch. Instead, the glass fragments were found in the living room, suggesting an alternative scenario. The fact that nothing of value was missing, and Belinda was found with all her jewelry on, indicated that she was not targeted for her possessions. David's gold championship high school football ring was also in plain sight on the dresser in the bedroom. The detectives initially believed that the murder scene had been staged to appear as a robbery, given the TV was left behind and still plugged in. However, further investigation revealed that the motive was a targeted killing of Belinda and her unborn child. The person who broke in did so solely to execute them. David's alibi was examined, and security camera footage from Brookshire and Home Depot confirmed his presence at both locations at the time of the murder. As a result, the detectives temporarily placed David on the back burner while they turned their attention to other suspects. During the initial interview, David claimed to have no knowledge of anyone who could have wanted to harm his wife. However, a few days into the investigation, he mentioned a potential suspect, their 16-year-old neighbor, Riley Sanders. Riley was not only their neighbor but also Belinda's student at Katy High School. He had a history of absence from her class, and Belinda had approached his parents about the issue. Additionally, Riley had access to his father's 12-gauge shotgun, the weapon used in the murder. Riley's interviews with the detectives revealed discrepancies in his alibi, and he failed a polygraph test. Despite this, he maintained his innocence and denied feeling hatred towards Belinda. The detectives verified Riley's alibi by speaking to his friends, which cast doubt upon David's theory. While the detectives entertained the possibility that Riley might have committed the crime, they maintained their focus on David. During the investigation, they learned about David's close relationship with another teacher, Heather Scott. David admitted to flirtatious behavior with Heather through emails and happy hour outings, but insisted their relationship was limited to that. The detectives questioned Heather on several occasions, and during their first interview, she admitted that she and David had never been alone together. Heather's statement to the detectives raised several red flags. She described her relationship with David as casual and romantic, but after consulting with an attorney, she revealed that their relationship was more significant than she had initially claimed. She admitted that they had spent New Year's Eve together and engaged in intimate relations at her house. When the detectives questioned David about his alleged New Year's Eve encounter with Heather, he admitted to it. However, he insisted that Heather meant nothing to him and that their connection was purely physical. He claimed that he genuinely loved Belinda and would have laid his life down for her. David admitted to hurting Belinda by having an affair but denied ever physically harming her. 3 months after Belinda's murder, a grand jury convened and decided not to indict either Riley Sanders or David Temple for her murder. However, the detectives remained convinced that David was responsible, although they lacked sufficient evidence to connect him to the crime. Over the following years, the investigation into Belinda's murder went cold, and the case remained unsolved. David moved on with his life and remarried to Heather Scott, the same woman he had an affair with. Despite never being charged with a crime related to Belinda's murder, her family was convinced that he was responsible. They did everything they could to keep Belinda's name in the spotlight, including erecting a giant billboard over a busy highway and taking news crews to her gravesite. However, despite their efforts, nothing seemed to change. The tip lines remained silent and leads dried up. Everyone thought Belinda's murder would remain unsolved, but in November 2004, everything changed. More than 5 years after Belinda's death, Scott Peterson was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife, Lacey, in California. This conviction sparked renewed interest in Belinda's case, as prosecutors in Texas believed there were numerous similarities between Lacey Peterson's murder and Belinda Temple's. Using Scott's conviction as a precedent, the prosecutors in Texas revisited Belinda's case to determine if there was sufficient evidence to charge David with murder. The prosecution formulated a theory that Belinda arrived home on January 11, 1999, and her husband David was lying in wait for her with a 12-gauge shotgun. They believed that David confronted Belinda and coerced her upstairs into a closet, where he fatally shot her in the head. Following the homicide, the prosecution believed that David staged the scene to resemble a botched burglary, took his son, and proceeded to drive around town to establish an alibi, ensuring he was captured on 2 security cameras. On November 30, 2004, 6 years after Belinda's murder, David Temple was arrested and charged with her murder. However, due to various delays, the case took an additional 3 years to reach court. During that period, Heather was never charged with any crime related to Belinda's murder, and no evidence was found to suggest that she had prior knowledge of David's involvement in Belinda's murder. In 2007, when David faced trial for the murder of his wife, his defense focused on proving that his neighbor, 16-year-old Riley Sanders, committed the crime rather than himself. After just 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty verdict, sentencing David to life in prison. However, in 2016, the courts overturned his conviction, citing the prosecution's failure to disclose crucial evidence. This reversal set the stage for another trial in 2019, where David was once again convicted of murdering Belinda. Despite the guilty verdict, the judge declared a mistrial as the jury was unable to agree on a sentence. In the years that followed, David's resentencing hearing was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, in 2023, the hearing commenced once again. It took the jury just a few hours to find David guilty and sentence him to life. In the quaint town of Canton, New York, a chilling crime sent shockwaves through the community in September 2015. The brutal murder of 35-year-old Kelly Clayton left her 2 young children, Cullen and Charlie, without a mother, and her husband, Thomas, reeling in grief. Kelly's death was a senseless act of violence that would forever change the lives of those who knew her. Thomas Clayton, a former hockey player, had traded in his skates for a successful business career. He had played for the Elmira Jackal hockey team as a forward, a position that required skill, strategy, and physical prowess. After hanging up his hockey gear, Thomas had built a thriving business empire, owning a franchise of Paul Davis Emergency Services of the Southern Tier, a fire and water damage restoration firm. He later became a project manager at Serpro, a similar franchise owned by his longtime friend and fellow Binghamton native, Michael Beard. Michael, a laborer and acquaintance of Thomas, had worked for him at Paul Davis and also rented an apartment in the village of Elmira Heights, owned by Thomas. This familiarity with Thomas's property would later become a crucial piece of the puzzle. Michael had often helped Thomas with odd jobs around his house, and the two had developed a cordial relationship. However, their friendship would soon be put to the test as the investigation into Kelly's murder unfolded. On that fateful night, Thomas's life was about to take a devastating turn. He had arrived home from a poker game, looking forward to a peaceful evening with his family. Instead, he found his wife lying in a pool of blood in the kitchen. The sight was gruesome, and Thomas's world came crashing down around him. He made a frantic 911 call, his voice shaking with fear and desperation. "My wife is dead. She's not breathing. Please hurry." The sound of Thomas's voice still haunts the investigators who answered the call. Deputy Swan, a seasoned officer with years of experience, was the first to arrive at the scene. He found Thomas kneeling beside Kelly's body, his face etched with grief and shock. The officer's body cam captured the gruesome scene, a sight that would haunt him forever. Kelly's body lay on the kitchen floor, a trail of blood leading from the bedroom, telling a tale of unimaginable violence. The walls, once a testament to the family's happiness, now bore the scars of a brutal attack. The kitchen, once filled with the aroma of freshly baked cookies and the sound of laughter, was now a crime scene, a reminder of the senseless violence that had taken Kelly's life. The investigators worked tirelessly to gather evidence, taking note of every detail, no matter how small. They found broken objects scattered around the house, frames smashed to the ground, and a large dent in the wall at the foot of the staircase. The attack appeared to be well documented by the damage and blood splatter. Kelly would have been in bed in the upper bedroom when the commotion started. The blood trail led from the bedroom to the kitchen, where Kelly's body was found. The investigators knew that they had to work quickly to find the killer, as the trail of evidence was still fresh. As the investigation continued, Thomas became a person of interest. His alibi for the time of the murder was shaky at best, and the investigators found inconsistencies in his story. Thomas claimed to have been at a poker game at a friend's house, but the friend later told the police that Thomas had left early, around 10 p.m. Thomas said he had arrived home around 10:30 p.m., but the 911 call was made at 10:45 p.m. The investigators knew that they had to question Thomas further, but he was cooperative, at least initially. The search for the murder weapon continued, and the investigators found a few leads, but nothing concrete. They searched the house, the yard, and the surrounding areas, but the weapon remained elusive. The autopsy report revealed that Kelly had died from blunt force trauma to the head, and the investigators knew that they were looking for a weapon with a heavy, blunt surface. As the days passed, the investigation continued, with the police working tirelessly to find the killer. Thomas's behavior became increasingly suspicious, and the investigators knew that they had to keep a close eye on him. The community was in shock, and the police were determined to find the person responsible for Kelly's murder. Little did they know that the killer was hiding in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. As the investigation continued, Deputy Swan and his team methodically cleared the house, room by room. "We got to clear this house. Just cover me. I'm going to go upstairs. I gotta go up," he instructed his team. The kids' rooms were first, and they found bloodstains on the floor. "Kids' rooms, this one's clear. Trying not to step on anything." "Okay, clear." The team moved cautiously, aware that the killer might still be lurking. As they reached the garage, they noticed an intact side door sitting wide open, but there was no sign of forced entry. Thomas Clayton's gambling habits were evident in the abundance of cash in the house, yet his safes remained unopened. The responding law enforcement officials initially thought they were dealing with a murder case, but as they approached Thomas, they noticed something odd. "Tom, hold up your hands. "Let's see if there are any wounds," they asked. But there were no wounds, no blood on him anywhere. The investigation intensified, with K-9 units searching the home and its surroundings. They directed their attention to a pond at the back of the property, skimming and then emptying it to collect evidence. Several agencies joined the case, led by Captain Eric Tyner of the Steuben County Sheriff's Office. Through interviews with Kelly's friends and family, they discovered that she was having trouble with her husband, Thomas Clayton, and was considering a divorce. Thomas was taken in for questioning, but there was another crucial witness, 7-year-old Charlie, who had been at home during the attack. She described the assailant as having eyes like her dad's and wearing a mask and jeans. In a second police interview at the Chemung County Child Advocacy Center, Charlie provided more details, aligning with the evidence inside the house. A brutal struggle had started in the bedroom and escalated downstairs to the kitchen. The young girl's statement seemed to verify what officers at the scene had suspected. Thomas Clayton was responsible for his wife's murder. Although not a firm idea, the police took Charlie's statement as confirmation and probable cause. After several hours of questioning, they arrested Thomas Clayton for second-degree murder on October 2, 2015. The investigation had unraveled a web of secrets and lies, revealing a shocking truth that would shake the community to its core. Thomas Clayton, a man who had once seemed like a loving husband and father, had been hiding a dark secret. His gambling habits and troubled marriage had led him down a dangerous path, one that ended in the brutal murder of his wife, Kelly. As the town of Canton struggled to come to terms with the tragedy, the police worked tirelessly to ensure that justice would be served. As the investigation into Kelly Clayton's murder continued, detectives were determined to uncover the motive behind Thomas Clayton's brutal actions. Despite his arrest, many pieces of the puzzle remain missing. Friends and family described the couple's relationship as happy and loving, with Kelly often expressing gratitude for her marriage. However, a different story emerged from Kelly's 16-year-old niece, who had worked for Thomas at Serpro that summer. She revealed that Thomas had confided in her about his unhappiness in his marriage, admitting to multiple affairs and a desire to divorce Kelly, but feared losing everything. As investigators questioned more of Thomas's friends and colleagues, a similar narrative unfolded. Multiple women came forward, claiming to have had sexual relationships with Thomas, who complained about Kelly, calling her lazy, ungrateful, and worse. Cell phone records showed that even as Thomas exchanged loving texts with Kelly just days before her murder, he was also communicating with these women. The investigation now had a clear motive: a domestic dispute gone too far, fueled by Thomas's desire for freedom and financial gain. The life insurance policy he had taken out on Kelly, doubled in the months leading up to her murder, stood to pay out $1 million. As Thomas Clayton was interrogated, he maintained an alibi, claiming to have been at a friend's house for a weekly poker game. However, a crucial piece of information came yet again from Kelly's niece. She mentioned Michael Beard, a former employee of Thomas's who had been fired recently. Investigators discovered that Michael had been stealing from homes while working at Serpro and was facing eviction from his home, owned by none other than Thomas Clayton. Michael was brought in for questioning and initially claimed no ill will toward Thomas. However, after his wife, Polly, spoke with investigators and Michael failed a polygraph test, his story began to unravel. It turned out that Thomas had borrowed a woman's cell phone to make a call just 90 minutes before discovering Kelly's body. A call placed to Michael Beard. Michael's partner revealed that the couple had fought that night, and Michael had left around 11:30 p.m., returning an hour and a half later. Confronted with the evidence, Michael confessed to entering the Claytons' house that night with the intention of burning it down. He had a set of keys and used them to enter through the side door, planning to use gas canisters in the garage to set the house ablaze. However, when he surprised Kelly in the bedroom, a bloody fight ensued, and Michael lost his nerve, fleeing the scene. The investigation had finally pieced together the events of that fateful night, revealing a web of deceit, betrayal, and violence that had led to Kelly Clayton's tragic murder. Thomas Clayton's desire for freedom and wealth had driven him to orchestrate a brutal crime, using his former employee Michael Beard to carry out the deed. As the truth came to light, the community was left reeling in shock and disbelief. How could a man who appeared to be a loving husband and father commit such a heinous crime? The investigation had uncovered a sinister plot, revealing the dark secrets that lay beneath the surface of the Claytons' seemingly happy marriage. In the end, justice was served, and Thomas Clayton was held accountable for his crimes. The case served as a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that the truth can be far more sinister than we ever imagined. As Michael Beard fled the Claytons' house, leaving Kelly's lifeless body on the kitchen floor, he abandoned his initial plan to set the house ablaze. The investigation took a crucial turn with Michael's arrest and the discovery of his DNA inside the house. The bloodstains on the doorway to Charlie's room revealed that Michael was present at the time of the murder, corroborating his confession. The police searched 2 locations, covertly scouring East 14th Street and Hall Street in Elmira, using a metal detector to uncover evidence. They retrieved a small object from the bush off State Route 225, which matched a piece found at the crime scene, the yellow handle of a maul. Michael's co-worker identified the handle as belonging to a maul that had broken earlier at the Claytons' property. Further investigation led to the discovery of a bag containing Michael's clothing, stained with Kelly's blood, in a swampy location. Keys to the house were retrieved from a shallow creek, and Mark Blandford, Michael's accomplice, came forward to corroborate Michael's confession. Mark claimed he was unaware of the plan and was instructed to keep watch outside while Michael carried out the crime. As the evidence mounted against Michael Beard, a curious detail emerged from Linda Miller, a friend of Thomas Clayton's. On the night of Kelly's murder, Thomas had borrowed Linda's phone to make a call, claiming his cell phone was left in his van. However, Linda noticed that Thomas had muffled the conversation and deleted the call history from her phone. Moreover, the other poker players that night confirmed that Thomas had his cell phone with him at the table all night, raising suspicions about his motives. Linda's call records revealed that Thomas had dialed 2 numbers from her cell phone. The first was the fax machine, a single-digit variation of Michael Beard's phone number, and the second call was connected to Michael Beard himself. Extensive forensic analysis of the crime scene, including blood spatters and prints, further implicated Thomas Clayton in the murder plot. Investigators discovered that Thomas had hired Michael Beard to carry out the crime, and they had communicated through texts, calls, and emails on the day of the murder. The shocking truth finally came to light. Thomas Clayton, the grieving husband, had orchestrated his wife's brutal murder. The investigation had unraveled a complex web of deceit, revealing a sinister plot that had claimed Kelly's life. As justice was served, the community was left to grapple with the chilling reality that sometimes the most unsuspecting individuals can be capable of the most heinous crimes. Thomas Clayton's plan to cover his tracks was meticulous, but ultimately, it was his own undoing. He had purchased a throwaway phone to use during the crime and made internet searches on how to hire a hitman. Michael Beard, the man he had hired to carry out the murder, stood trial first. When Michael took the stand in his own defense, he testified that Thomas had hired him to commit the crime and paid him $10,000 for his services. He also admitted to striking Kelly with a baseball bat while Thomas waited in the car outside the home. However, Michael later recanted his confession, and the prosecution was left without a key witness. The state needed to show proof that Michael was hired by Thomas in some other way, but no money was ever exchanged. The $110,000 allegedly promised to Michael had never materialized, and no incriminating conversations between the 2 men were ever overheard. Text messages between them dealt with work-related topics, some of which were notably cryptic, but they did not confirm any agreement to murder Kelly. The prosecution called a former police officer who runs a business that uses software to aggregate data from multiple sources, such as GPS data, phone company records, and cell tower information, to track the whereabouts and movements of active cell phones at any given moment. Using that information, he made maps that depicted Michael's and Thomas's whereabouts on the days preceding the murder. Additionally, the information revealed that Michael departed his house just before 11 p.m. on September 28th, right after he received a phone call from Thomas during the poker game. GPS data also traced Thomas to a local business, M&M Auto, at about noon on the day leading up to the murder. He stopped in to use the business's phone, saying he was unable to get a signal on his cell phone. Records obtained from that business line showed a call to Michael was placed at that time, which lasted just over a minute. Security footage from Michael's apartment building and the Serve Pro parking lot began to fill in the gaps. Thomas had arranged to switch vehicles the day before the murder, and another employee, Luca Tattle, the same worker who identified the murder weapon, showed up at Thomas's house on Saturday in his red pickup truck to collect a four-wheeler for a weekend event on Monday. Thomas offered to swap trucks with Luca for the day, saying he would unload the four-wheeler at home and return Luca's truck the following day. Instead of unloading it from his truck, Thomas's ServPro surveillance footage conveniently revealed that Thomas had unloaded the four-wheeler at home, left the red pickup truck in the lot at around 6 o'clock, and then driven a ServPro truck to the poker session that evening. Following Thomas's phone call, Michael Beard left his house, rode a bicycle that Thomas had bought him to the ServPro lot, picked up Luca's red truck, and drove away. After dropping off Mark Bradford shortly after 12:30 a.m., security footage once more revealed Thomas's movements. Thomas's trial saw 75 witnesses, 400 pieces of evidence submitted by the prosecution, and 6 full weeks of testimony. It took the jury just 6 hours to reach a verdict. Thomas was convicted of first-degree murder. Thomas's defense team appeared shocked by the decision, continuing to insist that no concrete evidence existed to link Thomas to a plot to hire Michael Beard. His lawyer pointed to his polygraph test, which showed he was telling the truth about not being responsible for Kelly's death. However, the jury saw through the lies, and Thomas was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The murder of Kelly Clayton was a tragic and devastating event for her family and friends. She was a beloved mother, wife, and realtor known for her kindness, generosity, and strong work ethic. Her family and friends were shocked and saddened by her senseless murder. In the aftermath of the murder, Kelly's family released a statement expressing their grief and requesting privacy. "Our family is absolutely devastated by the loss of Kelly. She was a wonderful mother, an amazing wife, and a dear friend to so many. We appreciate all of the support we have received and ask that you please respect our privacy during this difficult time." Additionally, local community members and colleagues of Kelly's expressed their shock about her violent and brutal demise. They shared that Kelly was a respected and dedicated real estate agent for whom colleagues had high regard. They were devastated that she was taken away from them so abruptly. Since the conviction of Thomas Clayton and Michael Beard for the murder of Kelly Clayton, the family has not made many public statements. However, they did release a statement thanking the police and the prosecution for their efforts in bringing the perpetrators to justice. Thank you to the Stewart County Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office for their tireless efforts in seeking justice for Kelly. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today, we're delving into a tragic case that occurred in the vibrant city of Indianapolis. Known for its perfect blend of modernity and heritage, Indianapolis is a city where ancient traditions meet advanced technology. It boasts art museums that showcase cultural achievements spanning from ancient times to the present. The city is alive with festivals and events, the most notable being the Indy 500, a pinnacle of automobile racing. But beyond its festive veneer, Indianapolis was the backdrop for a harrowing story that unfolded for the Blackburn family, transforming a place of peace into a site of unimaginable tragedy. On the chilly morning of November 10, 2015, Davy Blackburn was returning home from his regular workout at the gym. As he parked his car on Sunnyfield Court, his phone rang. The call was brief, but it delayed him from exiting his car immediately. Once the call ended, he gathered his gym bag and made his way to the front door, completely unaware of the horror that awaited him inside. As he opened the door, the world around him seemed to halt. The gym bag slipped from his grasp and thudded onto the porch. Inside, his wife Amanda lay motionless on the living room floor, her body surrounded by a growing pool of blood. Davy's heart raced as panic set in. He rushed to Amanda, his mind struggling to process the scene before him. He checked for a pulse, finding it faint but present, and frantically dialed for emergency services. The living room was in disarray. Furniture was overturned, personal belongings were scattered, and Amanda's purse was emptied haphazardly. Upstairs, the cries of their small child echoed through the chaos, adding to the urgency of the situation. Within minutes, which felt like hours to Davy, emergency responders arrived. The area was swiftly cordoned off as the home turned into a flurry of police activity and investigative prowess. Amanda was quickly transported to the hospital. Amanda Blackburn, aged 28, was a figure of communal and spiritual significance in Indianapolis. Born Amanda Grace Boers on July 31, 1987, in Muskegon, Michigan, she moved with her family to Elkhart, Indiana, in 1995. She was a product of a deeply religious upbringing, her life steeped in the Christian faith from an early age. Her father, a lead pastor at First Baptist Church in Elkhart, instilled in her a profound respect for religious traditions and the power of God's Word. Amanda's childhood was marked by a strong commitment to her faith. Unlike her peers, who were eager to explore the secular joys of adulthood, Amanda was devoted to spiritual growth. She found joy in the teachings of Christianity, embracing her faith with a zeal that was apparent to all who knew her. With her angelic demeanor, blonde hair, and a smile that could light up a room, Amanda embodied the virtues she preached. As a teenager, Amanda took a vow of chastity, a testament to her dedication to her faith. She promised not to engage in any romantic activities, including kissing, until marriage. She remained true to her vow, her heart only truly fluttering when she met Davy Blackburn. Davy, hailing from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, shared her deep faith. He was studying religion at Southern Wesleyan University and came from a similarly devout background. Their love story began unexpectedly, sparked by a blind date at a Hawk Nelson concert, a setup orchestrated by Amanda's sister and Davy's best friend. Despite attending different colleges, the connection they forged that night was undeniable. They nurtured their relationship through distance, spending every vacation together, sharing thoughts and dreams, their conversations often stretching into the wee hours. Their relationship was a modern-day testament to courtly love, pure, platonic, and profound. They shared everything from favorite scripture passages to personal aspirations. Humor was a constant in their relationship. They even held mock contests, like the milkshake drinking competition which Amanda playfully lost, earning her the nickname Milk Girl from Davy. As the relationship deepened, Davy and Amanda sought to understand each other better, attending sessions with a psychologist to hone their communication skills. This wasn't just about maintaining a relationship, but about preparing for a lifelong commitment, rooted in mutual respect and shared values. Yet, amidst this idyllic love and commitment, the cruel shadow of tragedy loomed, a reminder of the fragility of life and the sometimes harsh reality that even the most sacred places and bonds can be shattered in moments. On August 1, 2008, a beautiful summer day marked the beginning of a lifelong journey for Amanda and Davy Blackburn. Their wedding was a celebration of love and divine commitment, set against the backdrop of their shared faith. At the altar, Davy kissed Amanda for the first time, sealing their vows. He later confessed to friends that in that moment, he felt a divine assurance that their union was part of a greater plan, a special bond sanctified by God. The first 4 years of their marriage saw the Blackburns in South Carolina, where Davy served as an associate pastor under Pastor Perry Noble at New Spring Church. However, Davy harbored ambitions of greater service and impact. He envisioned starting a new church dedicated to the youth, a place where he could nurture and guide the spiritual growth of younger generations. He proposed the idea to Amanda, suggesting they move to Indianapolis to realize this dream. Amanda, deeply rooted in her family and community in South Carolina, initially hesitated. The thought of leaving her loved ones and the life she knew behind was daunting. However, Davy reassured her, speaking of a divine premonition that significant opportunities awaited them in Indianapolis. Convinced by Davy's unwavering faith and the potential to fulfill a greater purpose, Amanda agreed, and in 2012, the Blackburns relocated to Indianapolis. In Indianapolis, they founded an independent church on the north side, targeting the youth demographic. This was not just a church but a community hub where Davy and Amanda posted weekly videos offering relationship advice, conflict resolution tips, and interpretations of biblical teachings on intimate relationships. Their approachable style and genuine concern for their congregation's welfare quickly endeared them to a large number of young people. By 2014, the Blackburn family had grown to include their firstborn child, Weston. They found joy and contentment in their lives, surrounded by a community that shared their values and a home that resonated with love and laughter. Davy's sermons, filled with conviction and warmth, were well received, and the church thrived as a beacon of hope and fellowship. However, The serene life they had built was shattered on the morning of November 10, 2015. That day, emergency crews rushed to the Blackburn residence on Sunnyfield Court following a 911 call. There, they found Amanda, pregnant and grievously injured, quickly transporting her to the hospital. Despite the efforts of the medical team, Amanda succumbed to her injuries the next day, along with her unborn baby girl, who was posthumously named Evie Grace. The community was plunged into mourning, their grief amplified by the brutal nature of the attack. Social media became a platform for mourning as friends, family, and strangers shared their condolences and prayers. On November 11th, the day Amanda was officially declared deceased, Davy released a statement. He spoke of Amanda's lifelong mission to serve and love, expressing a steadfast belief that her legacy would inspire others towards faith in Christ. He affirmed his commitment to continue their shared mission in Indianapolis, declaring his faith in God's goodness and the eventual triumph over their tragedy. The investigation into Amanda's death revealed troubling details. Davy, who had found his wife in a dire state, recounted to investigators that he had left the house early that morning for the gym, leaving the door unlocked, a common practice for him, he noted, suggesting a semblance of safety in their community that was tragically misplaced. The unlocked door, he speculated, might have made it easier for the assailant to enter their home, robbing Amanda of the chance to seek help. She suffered 3 gunshot wounds, one of which was fatal. In the days following the crime, police swiftly ruled out Davy as a suspect. His alibi was confirmed, and the focus shifted to finding the unknown perpetrator. The testimony of the first responding paramedic, Scott Floyd from the Indianapolis Fire Department, who found Davy at the end of the driveway with blood-stained hands, underscored the chaotic and heart-wrenching scene. The community rallied, demanding justice for Amanda and her unborn child, their calls for action echoing through the streets of Indianapolis. The city was united in shock and sorrow, a community bound by a collective need to see justice served in the face of such senseless violence. When the emergency crews arrived at the Blackburn residence on that fateful morning, Scott Floyd, the first responder, noted that Davy Blackburn appeared unusually calm under the circumstances. According to Scott, Davy seemed bewildered by the situation unfolding around him. He told the responders that he had found his wife, Amanda, lying unresponsive on the floor, and despite his efforts, he couldn't wake her. Davy recounted that morning's events in detail. He had returned home from the gym around 7:30 a.m. and continued a phone conversation with his friend, Kenneth Wagner, while parked in his driveway. During the call, he occasionally stepped out of the car to check through the front door window if their baby, Weston, was awake. It wasn't until 8:10 a.m. that he ended the call and entered the house, only to find Amanda face down on the living room floor. Initially, he thought she might be ill or had fainted, possibly from complications related to her pregnancy. It took Davy 12 minutes to call emergency services after discovering Amanda, a delay he attributed to his initial belief that she had merely fainted. However, the scene was far more grim than he had first realized. Dr. Scott Floyd, who treated Amanda in the emergency room, later testified that the blood around her head had coagulated, indicating that the gunshot wound to her head had likely occurred a couple of hours before she was found. This detail, though not publicly released, raised questions about the timeline Davy provided. Following his 911 call, Davy contacted his father, but this action and the sequence of events were not heavily scrutinized during initial inquiries, as defense attorneys did not cross-examine him. His whereabouts and actions were corroborated by surveillance footage from the gym, effectively eliminating him as a suspect early in the investigation. An autopsy conducted on November 12th revealed the brutal extent of Amanda's injuries: a gunshot wound to the back of her head, another to her lower left arm, and a through-and-through gunshot wound on her upper back. Additional signs of a struggle included multiple scratches on her left cheek, a split lip, and a knocked-out lower tooth. These injuries suggested a violent confrontation with her attacker. The investigation broadened as police looked into a series of related incidents in the neighborhood. Neighbors reported hearing gunshots around 35 minutes after Davy had left the house that morning. Other reports included a series of home invasions and burglaries nearby that occurred on the same day, suggesting a possible connection. One neighbor's testimony highlighted the disbelief in the community, as the Blackburns were well regarded and such violence seemed inconceivable in their neighborhood. Items stolen from the Blackburn home, including Amanda's bank cards and a MacBook bag, initially pointed investigators towards a robbery motive. This theory was supported by multiple emergency calls about similar incidents in the area that morning. A comprehensive review of CCTV footage and interviews with neighbors and acquaintances of the Blackburn family further supported this line of inquiry. The break in the case came when police recovered a stolen Chrysler Sebring linked to the robberies. Inside the car, they found a pink sweater and an ATM receipt with transactions recorded on Amanda's stolen debit card. The sweater, crucially, contained DNA that matched one of the suspects, J.N. Watson. This evidence, combined with additional DNA tests, surveillance footage, and witness accounts, helped police identify and track down the 3 suspects involved in the string of burglaries and the murder. Lieutenant Richard R. of the Indianapolis Police Department remarked on the extensive cooperation and resources provided to the investigation, expressing confidence that these leads would soon result in the apprehension of those responsible for the heinous crime against Amanda Blackburn and her unborn child. The identification of Jaylen Watson marked a crucial turning point in the investigation of Amanda Blackburn's murder. Watson's cell phone records became a key piece of evidence, accessible because of his status on parole for a previous burglary. Similarly, the records of Diana Gordon, another suspect, were obtained and scrutinized. Both sets of records placed Watson and Gordon in the vicinity of the crime scene, and importantly, near the Chase Bank where Amanda's debit card was used on the day of her murder. Larry Taylor emerged as another significant figure in the case through surveillance footage analysis. By tracing his phone number, police were able to locate his address. Around the same time, a potentially pivotal piece of evidence was discovered, a gun found near the Blackburn home. A local man handed it over to the Broad Ripple Fire Department, claiming to have found it outside the couple's residence. This gun was sent to the crime lab for analysis, and after 2 weeks of meticulous police work, the results confirmed it was the weapon used in the crime. The culmination of the investigation led to the arrests of 18-year-old Larry Taylor and 21-year-old Jaylen Watson for the murder of Amanda Blackburn. Diana Gordon, 24, was arrested for a parole violation but not charged with the murder as he did not enter the Blackburn home. Taylor, during questioning, chillingly recounted that he had shot Amanda initially because she resisted during the robbery and then fatally shot her in the back of the head. The crime was part of a broader series of robberies that day. Taylor, Watson, and Gordon targeted the Blackburn home as their third burglary, drawn by the front door left unlocked by Davy Blackburn when he went to the gym. Inside, they confronted Amanda, with Taylor assaulting her with the gun. Although Watson and Gordon wanted to leave after obtaining the bank cards, Taylor stayed behind. In their absence, a struggle ensued. Amanda regained consciousness and fought back, prompting Taylor to shoot her fatally before fleeing the scene. The trio then attempted to withdraw money using the stolen debit cards, managing to extract $1,400 from one ATM, captured on CCTV. This footage ultimately helped identify them. Their criminal spree also included other break-ins where they stole various items, including a laptop, wallet, car, televisions, jewelry, and a pink sweater. This last item, discarded in a stolen Chrysler Sebring, contained Watson's DNA, linking him definitively to the crimes. Court documents detailed how Watson and Gordon cooperated with the investigation in hopes of a reduced sentence. Taylor waived his right to remain silent, admitting to his presence at the crime scene but claiming confusion over his actions. Formal charges were filed by the county prosecutor, with Larry Taylor facing 13 charges, including murder, and Jaylen Watson charged with multiple felonies. Diana Gordon, already detained for parole violation, faced additional burglary charges. A fourth individual associated with the suspects was questioned, but released due to lack of participation in the crimes. The resolution of this case was the result of relentless effort by the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, collaborating with the gang unit and federal marshals. Police Chief Rick Height commended the extensive cooperation across agencies, highlighting the dedication of detectives who worked tirelessly to bring the perpetrators to justice. Justice in the tragic case of Amanda Blackburn took a definitive turn due to the victim's pregnancy, which prompted prosecutors to consider additional charges related to the loss of the fetus. Although Amanda's clothing was disheveled, with her underwear removed and her shirt pulled up, there was insufficient evidence to support charges of sexual assault. The legal proceedings experienced significant turbulence. Larry Taylor's first trial in December 2021 was abruptly halted and declared a mistrial when it was revealed that a juror had improperly shared information about the case with other jurors. A subsequent trial took place in October 2022, featuring a more rigorous jury selection process. Over 100 potential jurors were drawn, each required to complete a detailed 16-page questionnaire to ensure they could impartially adjudicate the case. Ultimately, Larry Joe Taylor was sentenced to 86 years in the Indiana State Correctional Institution for the murder of Amanda Blackburn and associated burglary charges. Deano Gordon and Jalen Watson, who had accepted plea deals and testified against Taylor, received sentences ranging from 20 to 35 years. Both are currently serving their time in the Marion County Jail. In Indiana, murder convictions typically result in sentences of 45 to 60 years, with the possibility of life imprisonment or the death penalty. The prosecutors filed a motion to enhance Larry Taylor's sentence by an additional 20 years due to the aggravating circumstance of Amanda being pregnant at the time of her murder. Davy Blackburn, Amanda's husband and the pastor of their church, expressed relief that those responsible for his wife's death had been apprehended, ensuring they could not harm others. He has been vocal about his journey through grief, choosing a path of forgiveness and hope despite his profound loss. Amanda's funeral drew an overwhelming crowd, including Indiana Governor Mike Pence, reflecting her wide impact. The resident church also established a donation page to cover her funeral and medical expenses. Amidst his grief, Davy Blackburn shifted his role from a bereaved husband to a prominent blogger and speaker. He capitalized on his tragic experience by launching podcasts and video series titled Nothing Wasted, where he discusses his ordeal and spreads messages of faith and resilience. His public appearances have made him a well-known figure, discussing his personal tragedy on various media outlets, both national and international. Interestingly, after receiving an insurance payout following Amanda's death, Davy Blackburn purchased a new 5-bedroom house with a pool, signaling a new chapter in his life. He sold the house where the tragic incident occurred and has since remarried. Davy often shares his life updates on his blog, portraying a contrast between his profound loss and current contentment, underlining his belief that nothing is wasted. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more shocking and compelling stories ahead. On an ordinary Wednesday morning, Michael ZCK was absorbed in the mundane task of washing his car. As the soapy water cascaded down the vehicle's sleek exterior, his attention was caught by a startling sight. A white crossover screeched to a halt outside his modest house, its tires squealing against the quiet suburban backdrop. Michael wiped his hands on his jeans. Curiosity piqued as he observed the scene unfolding before him. In the front seats of the Kia Sportage sat a couple, their presence starkly contrasting. The man, calm and composed, seemed at odds with the woman beside him, who was visibly shaken, her body language screaming of fear. As Michael approached the vehicle, hoping perhaps to offer assistance, his senses were assaulted by a sudden, deafening explosion. The car burst into flames, an inferno rapidly consuming it, illuminating the street with its fierce blaze. The morning tranquility was shattered, replaced by the chaos of emergency sirens and the panicked cries of onlookers. The fire was relentless. Inside the car, the woman was engulfed in flames, her screams piercing through the chaos. Michael, acting on instinct, seized a nearby hose and charged towards the fire. With determination etched on his face, he battled the relentless inferno, aiming the powerful spray at the flames that threatened to consume the woman entirely. Onlookers gathered, horror-stricken, as the tragedy unfolded. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, their faces etched with shock and sorrow. "It's just sad, really horrible," one whispered, echoing the sentiments of many. This street, usually quiet and uneventful, had become the stage for a devastating drama. Meanwhile, investigators swarmed the scene, trying to piece together the events that led to such a catastrophic outcome. The woman, now identified as Hannah Clark, was a figure of strength and beauty, her life tragically cut short by the actions of her husband. a man described by many as misogynistic and cowardly. Hannah and her husband, Rowan Baxter, were both fitness trainers and business partners. They appeared to have it all, a thriving business and a beautiful family, until their marriage began to crumble. On the fateful day of the tragedy, they were following their routine, having just left the gym, and were about to grab some coffee when their morning took a tragic turn. For months prior to this incident, on a seemingly routine traffic stop, the couple was pulled over by Officer Kate from Capilaro Policing. The vehicle's registration had been canceled, a fact that seemed to unsettle Rowan significantly. As the officer questioned him, Rowan's frustration was palpable, his demeanor confrontational. Hannah, born in Brisbane on September 8, 1988, was known for her vibrant and compassionate nature. Her infectious smile and nurturing demeanor made her a beloved figure in her community. She met Rowan, 11 years her senior and a former professional rugby player, in a boxing class. Despite some initial reservations from her family due to Rowan's past and present circumstances, his charm eventually won them over. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, tensions were simmering. Rowan's confrontational demeanor and frequent use of steroids had caused rifts in their professional lives, leading to a steady decline in his client base. Despite these challenges, Hannah remained committed to Rowan, even as his behavior grew increasingly erratic and controlling. Their story, marked by love and turmoil, was one of contrasts. On one hand, there was Hannah's relentless positivity and dedication to her family and career. On the other, there was Rowan's struggle with insecurity and control, elements that ultimately led to tragic consequences. As Michael continued to fight the blaze, his efforts underscored the community's shock and the profound impact of the tragedy on all who witnessed it. The question on everyone's mind was clear. How could something like this happen here? The quiet street, once a place of safety and normalcy, was now marked by the scars of that devastating day. Hannah's flourishing career in the fitness industry, coupled with her vibrant personality, likely exacerbated Rowan's underlying insecurities. Despite the dynamic between them growing increasingly strained, the couple embarked on a joint venture in 2015. With financial backing from Hannah's parents and another investor, they opened a gym together. I'm Hannah, and whether you're just getting started or you already have some experience, we would love to hear more about how we can help you improve your health and fitness journey. Hannah would warmly invite potential clients. Alongside their personal training commitments, both Hannah and Rowan worked at a sports shoe retailer. Rowan's behavior at the store mirrored his previous workplace conduct, where he exhibited disrespect towards female colleagues and customers. His need for control over Hannah was palpable. He always seemed to be one step ahead, knowing conversations she had that he wasn't part of. Maybe us or another person, Rowan would prompt, revealing his surreptitious monitoring of her communications. This oppressive behavior extended to their personal training sessions, where Rowan displayed a consistent pattern of belittling and undermining female clients. A particularly disturbing incident occurred during a session with Hannah's mother, Sue. Rowan callously dropped her during training and, rather than showing concern or offering help, he mocked her. Despite such troubling behavior, Hannah's parents attempted to accept Rowan for the sake of their daughter's happiness. However, they observed a rapid decline in his demeanor and attitude, particularly after the birth of their children. Despite Hannah's parents' financial investment in their business, Rowan's disrespectful conduct towards customers persisted, worsening over time. His disapproving remarks towards clients, coupled with worsening behavior on the domestic front, painted a troubling picture of his character. Coming back to the traffic stop, Rowan was informed that this wasn't the first time the car's registration was overdue. It was, in fact, a second offense. Would you be the same one that she did? Yeah? So, in regards to that, because this is your second type of offense, we actually have to remove the number plates and actually immobilize your vehicle for 7 days, the officer explained. He continued, outlining the consequences of further offenses, which included vehicle immobilization for longer periods and eventual impoundment. Hannah and Rowan's marriage was incredibly troubled, marked by various forms of abuse: physical, sexual, emotional, and financial. The abuse was predominantly emotional and financial, which made it harder to recognize, even for the victim. Emotional and financial abuse are just as harmful as physical abuse but are harder to identify because they are less visible. The extent of domestic violence in Australia is shocking. On average, one woman a week is killed by a current or former partner. Rowan's controlling behavior gradually became evident to those around Hannah. He exhibited road rage, jealousy towards her relationships, and even controlled what she wore. Hannah wasn't allowed to wear shorts apparently because shorts are for children, and he prohibited her from wearing pink, claiming it attracted too much unwanted attention. He cloaked his unhealthy possessiveness behind the veil of protection, but little did Hannah know, her so-called protector would be the one destroying her life forever. Rowan went to extremes, recording Hannah's conversations, interrogating her about her interactions, and involving their children in his manipulation tactics. He deliberately isolated Hannah from her friends and family, causing a significant strain on her relationship with her brother so much so that Nat almost didn't invite Hannah to his wedding. He further exerted control by forcing Hannah to delete her personal Facebook page and creating a joint account controlled by him under the guise of it being for their family and business, all to isolate Hannah further and maintain control over her life. Have you got a smartphone? Yep. Grab it, and I'll show you that you can download. The officer guided Hannah on how to manage her vehicle's registration more effectively using an app. Despite the ongoing situation, Hannah maintained her composure, politely engaging with the officer and taking responsibility for managing the household finances. This contrasted sharply with Rowan's dismissive behavior towards the situation. Hannah's demeanor changed when she got back in close proximity to her toxic husband. It wasn't because of the situation or the officer's presence. It was her own husband creating that effect. Now, because of her, Rowan wouldn't get his fix of coffee on time. She half-heartedly tried to ask for a quick detour at a coffee shop, but they were only allowed to drive the car back home and not move it for 7 days. One can only imagine the mental trauma she had to endure after the officer left. Rowan was not only mentally torturing her, he was also sexually abusive. Hannah Clark's life was marred by the tyranny of her estranged husband, Rowan Baxter. He exerted control over her in every aspect, forcing her to sleep with him every night and satisfy his perverted tendencies. If Hannah refused intimacy, Rowan would make her life miserable. In one instance, he threw her watch across the room in frustration when he noticed she wasn't enjoying herself in bed with him. Rowan's manipulation extended to their children as well. He wouldn't physically harm them, but he would use tactics like throwing away their toys or preventing them from visiting Hannah's mother, knowing it would upset her. The children were aware of this dynamic and understood that if they upset their father, they would be denied visits to their grandmother. It's disturbing that young children had to navigate such emotional manipulation. A concerning fact about Rowan Baxter is that he had a history of abuse in his previous relationship. His first wife attempted to leave him several times before finally succeeding. Rowan even confided in a friend about thoughts of murdering his first wife, claiming he had prepared to kill her. Hannah later informed the police that Rowan had confessed to threatening his ex-wife, using it as another method of manipulation. The gym, which Hannah and Rowan co-owned, struggled financially, with debts of over $75,000 by late 2019, leading to its shutdown. This occurred before Hannah and Rowan separated in 2001 SSI. Hannah and Rowan's separation was tumultuous, as expected. The extreme caution Hannah had to exercise in leaving Rowan speaks volumes about his tyranny and control. It was a painstaking process orchestrated with meticulous care. Hannah's friends played a pivotal role in her escape plan. One day, while Baxter was at work, they quickly picked up the kids from school, packed a few essential belongings into 2 garbage bags, and whisked them away to Hannah's parents' house. The meager possessions they brought were a testament to their urgent need to flee the toxic environment they had endured for far too long. Hannah's mother, Sue, vividly remembered the sense of relief that washed over Hannah upon arriving at her parents' home. However, amidst the relief, there lingered an ominous dread. In a haunting moment, Hannah confided in her mother, "Who gets the children when he kills me, Mom?" It was a chilling statement that underscored Hannah's profound fear and the gravity of her situation. After their escape, Hannah's mother urged her to seek help from the police, and she eventually obtained a domestic violence restraining order against Rowan. The major point of contention in their separation was custody of their children. Initially, Hannah proposed an arrangement where Baxter would have 165 days of custody each year, alternating between 3 and 4 days per week. However, Baxter refused to agree to this arrangement against his lawyer's advice. He insisted on a perfectly split 50-50 custody, which was essentially similar to Hannah's proposal. It was clear that Baxter's refusal was more about control than practicality, making the situation difficult for Hannah. Rowan's behavior with the children became increasingly concerning after their separation in November 2019. Hannah returned from the gym to discover that Rowan had taken the children and turned off his phone, preventing her from reaching them. Thankfully, the children returned unharmed, but it was clear Rowan was exerting control. On a weekend before Christmas of the same year, Rowan took all 3 kids out for 4 hours, but then refused to return them despite Hannah's plans to visit their great-grandmother. This disregard for their agreed-upon schedule only added to the tension. He was supposed to return the kids by 4 p.m. but didn't show up until 8 p.m. It's unimaginable how terrifying these situations must have been for Hannah, fearing for her children's safety. The children themselves were also scared. Aaliyah, the oldest, called Hannah in tears while with her father, expressing how scared she was as they drove on an unknown highway. The next day, she got help from another mom to call Hannah and reassure her of their safety. It's heartbreaking that such young children had to experience such fear and uncertainty. Aaliyah, the oldest child, was intelligent and fully aware of the situation. She was incredibly articulate, reading ahead of her years, and enjoyed telling stories to her younger siblings. Not only that, but she had also taken after her mother when it came to physical fitness. Rowan prevented Aaliyah from contacting her mom or grandmother when she was with him. Every morning, Sue had to reassure Aaliyah that she wouldn't see her father that day because she was so terrified. It's incredibly heartbreaking and disturbing that a 6-year-old would endure such mental anguish. On December 26, 2019, on Boxing Day, Rowan Baxter committed the unthinkable act of kidnapping Lyanna. Hannah had planned to meet with him so the kids could play with their Christmas skateboards. With her hands full, Baxter took advantage of the situation and took little Lyanna, the middle child, and just took off with her in Hannah's car, which was registered in her name. He refused to return Lyanna and instead demanded that Hannah bring the other 2 children back to him. He kept Lyanna away for 4 days, leaving Hannah worried and desperate for answers. The unsettling kidnapping was witnessed by a doctor who felt compelled to alert the authorities. She commented that Rowan was in such a hurry that he neglected to secure a seatbelt for the 4-year-old. A caring parent wouldn't behave in such a manner. Detective Sergeant Dirk Harris, who conducted a thorough examination of the family's case following the abduction, characterized Rowan Baxter as a narcissist. Giving a statement, he said, "He committed reprehensible and inappropriate acts driven by his primary intent to inflict harm upon Hannah." Hannah's fears were tragically realized on February 19, 2020, when Rowan Baxter perpetrated an unspeakable act of violence. He ambushed Hannah and their children, Aaliyah, Lyanna, and Trey, as they were leaving a family daycare center. Rowan set the family's car ablaze, killing himself and their 3 children. Hannah, who was also in the car, managed to escape but suffered severe burns. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the community, and it soon became clear that Rowan's history of abuse and manipulation had led to this devastating outcome. The investigation revealed that Rowan had planned the attack meticulously, using his knowledge of the family's routines to orchestrate the ambush. His intention was to inflict maximum harm on Hannah and their children, a chilling testament to his narcissistic personality and desire for control. In the aftermath of the tragedy, Hannah's family and friends remembered her as a vibrant and caring person who had been trapped in a toxic relationship. Her mother, Sue, recalled how Hannah had confided in her about Rowan's abuse and manipulation and how she had feared for her life. The tragedy served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the need for greater support and resources for those affected by it. Despite the alarming kidnapping incident, the police seemed indifferent, perhaps thinking it was just a father's right. However, Hannah took action and filed a domestic violence restraining order against Rowan, temporarily preventing him from seeing their children. Shockingly, in January 2020, the restraining order was lifted, giving Rowan full access to the children again. The justice system's decision to set aside the restraining order highlights its flaws. Even in countries like Australia, legal processes sometimes fail to protect victims, leaving them vulnerable to further harm. After the kidnapping, the couple tried mediation to establish a custody agreement, but Rowan refused to sign a legally binding consent order, opting for a non-binding parenting agreement, likely seeking more control. In February 2020, a physical assault occurred when Hannah, living with her parents, went outside to retrieve the children from Rowan, who had just arrived. Sue, Hannah's mother, witnessed Rowan grabbing Hannah's wrist as she retrieved some papers from his car. These papers turned out to be compromising photos of Hannah, intended to discredit her in a domestic violence hearing. Rowan strategically placed the photos around his car, visible to the children. When Hannah tried to remove them, Rowan responded with extreme force, causing her to suffer a sprained wrist and a busted lip. The situation might have escalated further if Hannah's mother hadn't witnessed the incident and rushed to her daughter's help. This incident was promptly reported to the police, constituting a clear breach of the protection order. Hannah considered pressing charges against Rowan but decided not to. As a result of the assault, the parenting agreement he had signed was revoked, and he was denied access to his children. Following the assault, the police initially gave Rowan 48 hours to turn himself in, but 10 days passed without him being in custody. When he was finally arrested, his charges were downgraded, and he was not held in custody. If he had been arrested, Rowan Baxter wouldn't have gone on to commit the unimaginable atrocity in mid-February 2020. Hannah expressed her fear for her life to her mother and requested to create a will, genuinely concerned that her estranged husband might harm her. On the night of February 18th, Hannah and the children had a phone conversation with Rowan, during which he purportedly cried, manipulating their emotions. The police issued a domestic violence order against him, which he breached within weeks. The night before he murdered his wife and 3 children, Rowan Baxter called them. Despite the abuse, Hannah felt sympathy for him, a common tactic used by abusers to maintain control. Investigations later revealed alarming details leading up to February 18th. CCTV footage captured Rowan purchasing zip ties, cleaning fluid, and a fuel can. It was no snap decision. Rowan Baxter planned to hurt those he claimed to love. 2 days before he killed his family, the 42-year-old was seen wandering the aisles of a hardware store, first looking at mower fuel but ultimately deciding on buying a jerry can. Interestingly, he also bought 3 Kinder Surprise chocolates. The next day, he reached out to a men's helpline, but his intentions were far from seeking genuine assistance. Rowan inquired about behavioral change programs, his interest appearing solely self-serving and aimed at bolstering his position in court. On the morning of February 19th, Rowan spent an hour at a cafe, mentioning to the barista that he had been arguing with his ex-wife and was looking at maps on his phone. He was familiar with the area and was possibly planning his exit. These details underscored the premeditated nature of his actions. 16 hours later, he drove to Camp Hill, stopping at a fuel station on the way, before ambushing Hannah and his children inside their car. On that fateful morning, Hannah was preparing to take her children to school when Rowan parked across the street and observed them as she loaded the kids into the car. Rowan casually approached with a fuel can in hand, suddenly ambushing them, wielding a knife, and ordering Hannah to drive. At first, she resisted, but Rowan was barking at the top of his lungs, demanding her to drive away. Terrified, she complied. Once inside the car, Rowan pulled out the gas can and doused the interior, Hannah, and the children with gasoline. Shockingly, he had no gasoline on himself, indicating he didn't intend to die in the ensuing events. Probably in the heat of things, he accidentally splashed some on himself too. With Rowan directing her, Hannah drove. Then, she saw a man washing his car on the next street and attempted to signal for help. Michael ZCK was washing his car outside his home when he noticed a white Kia Sportage screeching to a halt outside. What he witnessed next will forever be etched in Michael's memory. A woman's frantic cry pierced the air, urging someone to call the police, claiming, "He's trying to kill me. He poured petrol on me." Michael, the witness, immediately called the police emergency number, and as he waited for help to arrive, he tried to reassure Hannah and the children, who were screaming in terror. Tragically, despite Michael's efforts, Rowan Baxter's sinister plan unfolded. He set the car ablaze, engulfing Hannah and their 3 children, Aaliyah, Lyanna, and Trey, in flames. The horrific scene was witnessed by Michael and other bystanders, who were powerless to stop the tragedy. The police and emergency services arrived shortly after, but it was too late. The car was consumed by fire, and the family of 4 perished in the inferno. Rowan Baxter, the perpetrator of this heinous crime, died shortly after, his body found nearby with severe burns. The community was left in shock and grief, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of this senseless act of violence. The investigation that followed revealed a history of domestic abuse and control, painting a chilling picture of a man who had meticulously planned and executed this atrocity. Hannah's family and friends remembered her as a vibrant and caring person who had been trapped in a toxic relationship. Her mother, Sue, recalled how Hannah had confided in her about Rowan's abuse and manipulation and how she had feared for her life. The tragedy served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the need for greater support and resources for those affected by it. Michael, a bystander, tried to help but was blown away by the force of the blast. Despite being fully engulfed in flames, Hannah managed to escape the burning car, but her children were trapped inside. Michael and an off-duty paramedic tried to rescue them, but the intense heat and raging fire made it impossible. Hannah was rescued but suffered severe burns, covering 97% of her body. Despite her excruciating pain, her primary concern was the well-being of her children. She provided crucial information to the authorities, detailing Rowan's actions before the fire engulfed them. Rowan emerged from the vehicle, badly burned and disoriented, but instead of helping his children, he ran back into the burning car, retrieved a knife, and prevented bystanders from extinguishing the fire. He later attempted to take his own life by plunging the knife into his chest twice. Despite the heroic efforts of the off-duty paramedic and bystanders, Rowan succumbed to his self-inflicted injuries. The toxicology report revealed that he had no traces of drugs or alcohol in his system, indicating he was completely sober and conscious of his actions. Hannah, despite her severe burns, managed to provide 3 separate statements to the police, naming Rowan as her ex-husband and identifying him as the perpetrator. She also told them about the protection order against him and how he had doused the car's interior with petrol before igniting it. Tragically, Hannah succumbed to her injuries later that day, along with her 3 young children, Aaliyah, 6, Lyanna, 4, and Trey, 3. The investigation revealed that Rowan had planned to kidnap and murder Hannah before fleeing with the children, but her desperate plea for help altered his plans, leading to the heinous act of setting the car ablaze. In her legacy, the Small Steps for Hannah Foundation was established to combat domestic violence in Australia, aiming to halt incidents like this from happening again. By sharing Hannah's story, they hope to inspire others to recognize their worth and stand up against abuse in all its forms. The coroner's investigation concluded that Rowan was a master manipulator who entrapped Hannah and her children, and it was unlikely that anyone could have stopped him once he got into the car. The tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the need for greater support and resources for those affected by it. In the heart of Renton, Washington, a suburb approximately 32 minutes from the bustling city of Seattle, lived Ingrid Rounceville, a single mother of 3 young daughters. Born on August 2, 1975, Ingrid's life was a blend of dedication both to her career and her family. She worked tirelessly as a nurse at the Swedish Medical Center in Seattle, a profession that speaks volumes of her compassion and commitment to helping others. Despite recently enduring the emotional turmoil of a divorce from Phil Line, the father of her children, Ingrid remained a pillar of strength and love for her daughters. The couple had arranged for shared custody, ensuring that both parents remained integral parts of their daughters' lives. Ingrid's persona was a unique amalgamation of physical delicacy and a vibrant, commanding presence. Her diminutive stature was in stark contrast to her formidable personality, a testament to her spirited approach to life. Above all, her unwavering love for her daughters was evident in every sacrifice she made, affirming her readiness to go to the ends of the earth for their happiness and well-being. The narrative takes a mysterious turn on April 8, 2016, when Ingrid decided to step into the world of online dating, a decision that led her to cross paths with a man whose identity would later unfold in unforeseen ways. The pair chose to spend their evening at the Seattle Mariners opening game, a choice that blended the excitement of new beginnings with America's favorite pastime. The evening did not conclude with the game. The duo proceeded to a bar, seeking to prolong their connection. This bar held a personal connection to her date, as his sister was an employee there, adding a layer of intimacy to their outing. However, the light of the following day, April 9th, cast a shadow over the previous night's events. Phil Line, Ingrid's ex-husband, arrived at her residence with the intention of dropping off their daughters, only to be greeted by silence. The absence of Ingrid's 2015 silver Toyota Highlander from its usual spot was the first sign that something was amiss. The house, usually bustling with life, stood eerily silent, with no response to his knocks and repeated calls going unanswered. Alarmed, Phil reached out to Ingrid's mother, who possessed a spare key to the house. The discovery she made upon entering the house was chilling. Ingrid's belongings, including her computer, purse, wallet, and phone, were all present, yet there was no sign of Ingrid herself nor of her vehicle. This prompted an immediate call to the police, marking the beginning of a desperate search for Ingrid. In a bid to uncover any clues that could lead to her daughter, Ingrid's mother remembered that they shared a Verizon account. This connection enabled her to access Ingrid's phone records, leading her to perform a Facebook search using the most recent phone number. The search pointed to a profile belonging to John Charlton, the man Ingrid had met the previous night. In a move driven by a mixture of hope and desperation, Ingrid's mother sent a text to John, inquiring about her daughter and revealing that she had contacted the authorities. John's response was to acknowledge the date, but to also distance himself from the events that followed, stating that he hadn't spent the night with Ingrid. As the community grappled with Ingrid's sudden disappearance, a chilling discovery was made by Mike Novasio, a resident living approximately 10 miles from Ingrid. The mundane act of taking out his recycling bin turned into a scene from a nightmare when he noticed what appeared to be human body parts encased in white trash bags. This horrifying find prompted an immediate call to the police, adding a gruesome chapter to the unfolding mystery of Ingrid's disappearance. The ensuing investigation would unravel a web of digital footprints, community efforts, and the relentless pursuit of truth by Ingrid's loved ones. As the search for Ingrid intensified, the pieces of the puzzle began to coalesce, painting a picture that no one was prepared for. The story of Ingrid Rounceville is a poignant reminder of the complexities of human connections, the vulnerabilities inherent in the search for companionship, and the indomitable spirit of a mother's love that refuses to be extinguished, even in the face of the darkest mysteries. In a poignant moment of raw emotion, Mike shared his harrowing experience on a true crime podcast episode. His voice trembled as he recounted the gruesome discovery he made. The sight of a human head, its toenails meticulously painted, confronted him as he took out his recycling. The horror of the scene was compounded by the meticulous care with which the body parts had been wrapped and placed in the trash bags, indicating a chilling level of precision and forethought. Overwhelmed by the grisly discovery, Mike admitted to feeling physically ill, a reaction that the profound impact such a grim sight can have on a person. The immediacy of the situation was underscored by the swift arrival of the police and the medical examiner to the scene. Upon opening the trash bags, they were confronted with a head, a segment of a leg, and an arm. Remarkably, there was no sign of decomposition, which allowed the authorities to quickly identify the remains as belonging to Ingrid Rounceville. This identification marked a tragic end to the mystery of Ingrid's disappearance, but also opened a new chapter of investigation into her untimely death. The investigative spotlight initially fell on Phil, Ingrid's ex-husband, given his close connection to her. However, he was swiftly ruled out as a suspect, shifting the focus of the investigation. Attention then turned to John Charlton, the last known person to have seen Ingrid alive. His online dating profile, which candidly stated his lack of interest in anything serious, painted him as an unremarkable individual seeking casual connections. Yet, the police's interaction with him would reveal a more complex character. During his interview with the police, Charlton admitted to being homeless, a revelation that seemed to annoy him, perhaps feeling judged or misunderstood. His recollection of the events leading up to Ingrid's disappearance was fragmented and laced with ambiguity. He described their night together in vague terms, hinting at intimacy but clouded by his claim of having blacked out. His assertion that he woke up on a sidewalk, disoriented and detached from the previous night's events, added a layer of perplexity to his account. Charlton's communication with Ingrid the morning after their date suggested a casual attempt to reconnect, yet his acknowledgement of not staying over at her place, ostensibly due to her reluctance to introduce him to her children because of his homelessness, painted a picture of a man grappling with societal judgments and personal shortcomings. His self-admission of not being a normal person and the revelation of his sporadic stays at his ex-girlfriend's place, despite their complicated relationship, further complicated the image of Charlton. When the conversation with the police reached a point of discomfort, Charlton sought the refuge of legal counsel, a move that momentarily paused the direct line of questioning. Yet, the surveillance in the room captured a moment of vulnerability as he prepared to rest, using his sweatshirt as a makeshift pillow, a poignant reminder of his precarious living situation. The investigation deepened with a search warrant for Ingrid's home. Inside, detectives found an almost depleted box of garbage bags, eerily similar to those discovered in the recycling bin. This connection between the bags found at the crime scene and those in Ingrid's home hinted at a meticulously planned act, drawing a direct line from the domestic sphere of Ingrid's life to the chilling disposal of her remains. The unfolding investigation into Ingrid's murder weaves a complex tapestry of online encounters, fleeting connections, and the stark realities of human vulnerability. As the authorities pieced together the events leading to Ingrid's tragic demise, the narrative evolved beyond the initial shock of her disappearance to reveal the deeply human stories of those entangled in this tragic event. This case underscores the unpredictable dangers of online dating, the societal challenges faced by the homeless, and the profound impact of crime on communities and individuals alike. In the quiet aftermath of Ingrid Rounceville's disappearance, the investigation into her tragic death uncovered chilling evidence within the very walls of her home. Among the most harrowing discoveries was a pruning saw, casually propped up in the bathroom as if it were an everyday tool. However, the reality was far more sinister. The saw's teeth were not just coated with the remnants of a garden's overgrowth, but with the unmistakable traces of human blood, tissue, and bone. This macabre find was complemented by the presence of blood in the bathtub drain, suggesting a scene of horror that had unfolded within the supposed sanctuary of Ingrid's bathroom. The narrative took a grimmer turn on April 15, 2016, when more of Ingrid's remains were discovered, this time in a recycling receptacle. The discovery was prompted by a phone call Michael Mullen received from his neighbor, leading to the horrifying find of a torso, distinguishable by a pierced belly button, a feature Ingrid was known to have. This grim piece of the puzzle further confirmed the identity of the remains as belonging to Ingrid. Only days later, the investigation's scope widened as a human leg was found at a Seattle recycling plant, adding another layer of tragedy to the unfolding case. The meticulous search within Ingrid's home revealed even more damning evidence. The plumbing was removed, and within the now dismantled drain trap, investigators found additional blood, a testament to the thoroughness of their search and the extent of the crime. In an effort to uncover traces of the crime that might have been meticulously cleaned away, investigators employed a reagent known as Blue Star. This substance, known for its ability to reveal blood traces invisible to the naked eye, indicated that someone had attempted to erase the evidence of the crime scene within Ingrid's home. Initially, the medical examiner's investigation into Ingrid's death pointed to homicidal violence. However, a more detailed examination revealed subtle, yet telling signs of the true nature of her demise. Petechiae in Ingrid's eyes and hemorrhaging on her neck painted a grim picture of strangulation, followed by the dismemberment of her body within the confines of her own home. Furthermore, the toxicology report added another layer of detail to the night of the crime, showing Ingrid's blood alcohol content was 0.074, indicating she had been drinking but was not significantly impaired. In a development that seemed to provide a breakthrough in the case, Ingrid's car was found in Belltown, a mere 6 minutes drive from Seattle. Inside, under the handle of the driver's door, investigators lifted 3 fingerprints that would lead them straight to a suspect, John Charlton. These fingerprints matched Charlton's, and inside the car were found trash bags similar to those used to dispose of Ingrid's body parts. The investigation then led to John's ex-girlfriend, who provided insights into John's activities following his date with Ingrid. She recounted that John was supposed to visit her the morning after his date, but arrived later than expected, using an unplanned event as his excuse. Notably, John had a fat lip, which he attributed to an attempted robbery at the bar. Upon questioning by the police, John Charlton bore physical signs of a recent altercation, including an abrasion on his head and chin, along with scratches on his chest and arms. These injuries, combined with the evidence gathered, culminated in Charlton's arrest and charge for the murder of Ingrid Rounceville. John Charlton was not a stranger to the criminal justice system. His history spanned across 6 states, marked by charges ranging from grand theft to assault and attempted robbery. Notably, even his own parents had once sought legal protection against him through a restraining order, though it was later dropped. This pattern of behavior and interaction with the law painted a troubling picture of Charlton's past, offering a glimpse into the complexities and challenges that characterized his life. As the case against John Charlton unfolded, it revealed not just the tragic end of Ingrid Rounceville but also cast a spotlight on the darker aspects of human nature and the profound impacts of crime on communities, families, and individuals. The investigation into Ingrid's murder, marked by meticulous police work and forensic analysis, underscored the relentless pursuit of justice in the face of tragedy. As the investigation into Ingrid Rounceville's murder unfolded, the disturbing history of John Charlton began to emerge, painting a picture of a man with a troubled past and violent tendencies. Several of John's ex-partners came forward with harrowing accounts of their experiences with him, shedding light on the pattern of behavior that culminated in Ingrid's tragic death. One ex-girlfriend recounted a chilling incident where John had choked her during an intimate moment, applying pressure to her neck until she struggled for breath. This account of asphyxiation during a moment that should have been characterized by trust and mutual respect underscored the dangerous undercurrents of John's personality. Another former partner shared a dark confession John had made to her. He claimed to have killed someone in Florida. This revelation, though unverified by the Seattle police, added a sinister dimension to John's character, suggesting a history of violence that extended beyond the confines of his relationship with Ingrid. Friends from John's past also came forward, describing him as a loner who became markedly different under the influence of alcohol and drugs. These substances, according to John's own admission to the police, were a problem for him, potentially exacerbating his violent tendencies. A friend highlighted this transformation, noting how substance abuse seemed to unlock a more dangerous version of John, one capable of horrific acts. The evidence collected from Ingrid's home stood in stark contrast to John's claim of having blacked out on the night of her murder. The meticulous cleanup of the crime scene, the dismemberment of Ingrid's body, and the calculated disposal of her remains suggested a level of consciousness and intent that belied his defense of memory loss. The police were left to ponder the motive behind John's actions, particularly his decision to leave parts of Ingrid's body in recycling bins, a choice seen as either a macabre bid for attention or a twisted desire to be apprehended. In a turn of events that surprised many, John Charlton chose to plead guilty before his trial could commence. On October 2, 2017, he admitted to the first-degree murder of Ingrid Rounceville and the theft of her motor vehicle. His sentencing on January 5, 2018, to 27 years and 9 months in prison sparked outrage among those who felt that the punishment did not adequately reflect the gravity of his crimes, especially given the possibility of his release in his 60s. Compounding this sense of injustice was the fact that the motive for Ingrid's murder remained a mystery, and not all of her remains had been recovered. The emotional impact of Ingrid's murder was palpable during John's sentencing, where Nancy, a friend of Ingrid's, confronted him with a powerful statement that encapsulated the brutality of his actions and the profound loss felt by those who knew Ingrid. Nancy's words painted a vivid picture of a life violently extinguished, of a vibrant spirit quelled, and of a heinous act that left a family and community in mourning. Reflecting on John Charlton's past and his actions, it becomes evident that he was a deeply troubled individual, marked by a history of substance abuse, violence, and a disturbing disregard for human life. His criminal record, spanning multiple states, hinted at a propensity for violence that ultimately found its most tragic expression in the murder of Ingrid Rounceville. Ingrid's decision to venture into dating again, a step towards finding happiness and companionship, tragically led her to cross paths with John, a man whose deceit and violence shattered her family's world. The heartbreak of Ingrid's family, especially her young daughters, is immeasurable. The hope remains that they are enveloped in love and care by their father and the broader community as they navigate a world forever altered by the loss of their mother. Ingrid's story is a poignant reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk behind the facade of normalcy and the devastating impact of violence on families and communities. Hi everyone, my name is John, and today we take a look into another horrible case of Raina Marroquin. In the summer of 1999, Ronald Cohen was getting ready to move out of his house at 67 Forest Drive in Jericho, New York. The night before he was supposed to move, Ronald decided to finally deal with an old 55-gallon drum that had been sitting in a dark corner of his basement since he bought the house in 1990. The drum was left by the previous owner, and because it was so heavy, Ronald had just left it there all these years. He never opened it because there were stickers on it that made him think there might be dangerous chemicals inside. The day before he moved, Ronald put the drum out on the curb for a waste removal company to pick up. But the next morning, he found a note from the company saying they couldn't take the drum because it was too heavy. Ronald decided the best thing to do was to open the drum and see if he could get rid of whatever was inside to make it lighter. When he opened it, a terrible smell hit him, and inside, he saw a human hand and a shoe. This scared Ronald, and he called the police right away. The police came and took the drum to their forensic team to check it out. Inside the drum, along with the horrible smell, they found the dried-up body of a woman. They also found plastic pellets, a plastic flower, some papers, and an address book, but they couldn't read them because they were covered in a strange green liquid. The doctors who looked at the body said it was a woman who was between 20 and 30 years old, probably Hispanic. She had been hit on the head several times, which killed her. They also found out she was pregnant, almost ready to have her baby. On the woman's body, they found 3 rings and a necklace that had, "To Patrice, with love, Uncle Phil," written on it. The police looked at the drum closely and found out it had a serial number and the name of the company that made it. They found out the drum was made in 1965 for a company that made plastic flowers. The owner of this company was Howard Elkins, and interestingly, he was also the first person to own the house where Ronald found the drum. The green liquid in the drum was a dye used for coloring the plastic flowers. The police also managed to read some of the stuff in the address book by using a special light. They could see a permanent residence card and 2 names with phone numbers. One number was for a woman named Kathy Andrade, and the other was for Howard Elkins, the man who owned the plastic flower company and the first house owner. This was the beginning of a mystery that involved looking back many years to understand the story of the woman in the drum, her connection to the house, and how her fate was sealed in such a tragic and mysterious way. In a twist that sounds like it's straight from a mystery novel, the investigation into the discovery of a barrel containing a mummified woman led detectives to Kathy Andrade. Remarkably, Kathy had not only maintained the same phone number over the years, but also continued to live in the same apartment. Upon hearing the investigator's story, Kathy didn't hesitate for a second to identify the woman in the barrel as her friend, Raina Marroquin, who had vanished without a trace 30 years prior. Raina Angelica Marroquin's story begins in El Salvador, where she was born on December 2, 1941. Little is known about her life in her homeland, aside from a brief marriage that ended in disappointment. In pursuit of a fresh start and the American dream, Raina made a bold move in August 1966, leaving behind her past and setting her sights on New York City. She shared with her mother dreams of making something of herself, a hope that many immigrants carry with them to new shores. Upon arriving in New York, Raina found herself in Manhattan, securing a place to stay in a foster home dedicated to women. Eager to integrate and build her new life, she enrolled in English language classes. These classes were a stepping stone for Raina, who soon found employment at Melrose Plastics, a factory that produced plastic flowers. This job, although perhaps mundane to some, was a part of Raina's bigger journey towards achieving her dreams in America. Raina made it a point to stay connected with her family back home, regularly sending letters filled with updates and stories of her life in the United States. However, in 1969, The flow of letters abruptly stopped, plunging her family into worry and uncertainty. The sudden silence from Reina was out of character, and her family feared the worst had happened. In response, they reported her missing to the authorities in El Salvador and even placed advertisements in local newspapers, desperately seeking any information on her whereabouts. Despite their efforts, Reina's disappearance remained a mystery, her case filed away among countless other missing persons. Kathy Andrade's relationship with Reina was more than just casual friendship. They were close confidants who met during their English classes. Kathy fondly remembered Reina as the most delightful person she had ever met, someone whose personality was as vibrant as the plastic flowers she helped create. Reina often spoke of her family and her fondness for New York, a city that represented hope and opportunity. Reina's life took a significant turn when she became pregnant. She moved out of the foster home and into an apartment in New Jersey, provided by the father of her unborn child. Reina kept the identity of the man a secret, revealing only that he was already married with 3 children. She held on to the hope that he would leave his wife to start a new life with her and their baby. However, when it became clear that the man had no intention of fulfilling his promise, Reina took a drastic step. She called his wife to expose their affair and the fact that she was pregnant with his child. Kathy learned of Reina's actions through a frantic phone call from her friend, who confessed that she had made a terrible mistake by contacting the man's wife and that he had subsequently threatened her life. Kathy Andrade's concern for her friend Reina Marroquin turned into fear after their last conversation. Reina had called her in a state of panic, confessing that she had revealed her affair and pregnancy to the wife of the man responsible. She was convinced that he would go to any lengths to silence her for what she had done. Reina's terror was palpable through the phone, leaving Kathy with a sense of dread that something terrible might happen. Motivated by worry and the need to ensure her friend's safety, Kathy made her way to Reina's apartment. Upon arrival, she encountered a scene that seemed ordinary yet unsettling under the circumstances. The front door was ajar, allowing her to enter without knocking. This was unusual for Reina, who was meticulous about her privacy and safety. Inside, Kathy found signs of a life abruptly interrupted. Hot food simmering on the stove, yet no sign of Reina herself. It was as if Reina had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the ghost of her presence. Kathy waited in the apartment for hours, hoping that Reina would return or call. But as the hours ticked by with no word from Reina, worry turned into alarm. She realized that she had to act, so she went to the nearest police station to report Reina missing. However, her attempt to seek help hit a wall. The police informed her that since she wasn't a family member, they couldn't officially take her report of Reina's disappearance. This policy left Kathy feeling helpless and frustrated, as it seemed that there was no way to initiate a search for her friend. The investigation into Reina's disappearance took a significant turn when the police decided to reach out to Howard Elkins. His connection to the case was undeniable. Not only was his name found in the address book alongside Reina's remains, but he also owned the plastic flower factory where Reina worked and was the original owner of the house where her body was discovered decades later. This convergence of clues led investigators directly to Elkins as a person of interest. Howard Elkins, now retired, was living a quiet life in Boca Raton, Florida, with his wife and children. When approached by the investigators, his demeanor was anything but helpful. He acknowledged his ownership of the plastic flower factory but denied any recognition of the barrel or the green dye found with Reina's remains. His claim that his company never used such chemicals raised eyebrows, given the evidence found alongside Reina's body. Despite his initial denials, a crack appeared in Elkins' facade when he admitted to having had an extramarital affair with one of his employees. This confession was a turning point in the conversation, yet Elkins claimed he could not recall her name or what she looked like. This vague acknowledgement contrasted sharply with the details emerging from the investigation, painting a picture of a man who was perhaps more involved than he was willing to admit. When the detectives confronted Howard Elkins about Reina Marroquin's disappearance, he insisted he knew nothing about it. He couldn't, or perhaps wouldn't, explain why his name was found in Reina's address book. Howard's evasive answers and his refusal to acknowledge any connection to Reina only fueled the investigators' suspicions. The situation reached a turning point when Sergeant Robert Edwards requested a DNA sample from Howard to compare with the DNA of Raina's unborn child. Howard's outright refusal to cooperate and his insistence that the detectives leave before his wife returned home raised red flags. Despite his objections, the investigators informed him they would be back with a court order to obtain the DNA sample they needed, convinced of his involvement in the case. However, before the detectives could return, Howard took a drastic and final step. The 70-year-old drove to a nearby Walmart, purchased a shotgun and ammunition, and tragically ended his life in his garage. His son was the one to find him. This shocking turn of events left the community and the investigating team in disbelief. In the aftermath, police were able to collect blood samples from Howard at the scene of his suicide. Despite the challenges of analyzing DNA that had degraded over 30 years, advancements in forensic science allowed them to confirm that Howard Elkins was indeed the father of Raina's child. This revelation seemed to offer an explanation for Howard's desperate act, as Sergeant Edwards surmised that guilt and fear of the truth coming to light had led him to take his own life. Sergeant Edwards pieced together what he believed had happened. Howard had gone to Raina's apartment on that fateful day in 1969, abducted her, and took her life at the factory. He then placed her body in the barrel, intending to dispose of it in the ocean. However, after filling the barrel with plastic pellets to ensure it would sink, Howard discovered it was too heavy to move and ultimately left it in the basement of his Nassau County home. The resolution of the case brought long-awaited closure to Raina's family, though it came with a heavy heart. Raina's mother, aged 95, revealed to a newspaper that she had dreamed of her daughter trapped inside a barrel. The discovery of Raina's remains allowed her family to finally lay her to rest in El Salvador, and a month after Raina was buried, her mother passed away. For Raina's sister, Dora, the bond with her sister remains unbroken. Despite the decades that have passed and the tragic circumstances of Raina's death, Dora feels Raina's presence is still with them. The family holds on to their memories of Raina, a testament to their love and the indelible mark she left on their lives. In facing the truth of Raina's fate, her family honors her memory, ensuring that she will never be forgotten.